I'd like to welcome all of you to Chemeketa Community College. My name's Julie Huckestein, and I'm the president of the college. I'll provide some brief remarks, and then we're going to start the program. Chemeketa Reads began in the 2006-2007 academic year as a community reading project where students, faculty, and staff could have the shared experience of reading, thinking, and enjoying the same book. It is modeled after similar community reading projects offered through public libraries and institutions of higher learning nationwide. The criteria for selecting a Chemeketa Reads text includes accessibility and interest to a wide range of readers while broadening the reader's perspective by presenting diverse characters, settings, and themes. This year's book is Becoming Nicole, The Transformation of an American Family by Amy Ellis Nutt. It is the story of the Maines family. You'll hear more from Nicole and Wayne Maines over the course of today. I read the book and was moved by the strength, resilience, and love the family has for each other and for their continued advocacy for the rights of transgender individuals. I'd like to extend our gratitude and thanks to Nicole and Wayne for being here with us, and to Linda Herrera for contacting them through Facebook, no less, and making the arrangements. She's worked really hard on this. And I'd also like to thank everyone else who's worked hard and is working to make this day possible. I hope you enjoy the rest of the program, and thank you for sharing this very special event with us. I'm now going to turn it over to Wayne, who's going to introduce Nicole.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. It's a long flight from Portland, Maine, by the way. It took us a little while to get here. But to have universities around the country, one, buy the book. I have 2 kids in college, so that's great. You know, it's helping me out a little bit. But this whole journey has been very surreal for my family. We're just an average family, and with maybe a kind of a unique journey. And you know, it is truly a transformation of an American family, not just Nicole. Actually, Nicole didn't have to transition or transform very much. She always knew who she was. The rest of us had to catch up, and luckily, she's this powerful little bratty kid that would never stop telling you who she was. I used to fight with her. You don't want to be a girl. Yes, I do. No, you don't. Yes, and she's 5, and I'm losing. I'm 45 years old, and I'm losing. And when Linda reached out, I said, I absolutely want to come because with this recent election, we're losing ground every day. And I'm really worried about that. If you could go to the next slide, Nicole. A few years ago, we got invited to meet President Obama for some of the things that we've done, and we went to the Pride celebration when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was overturned, and it was so powerful. And I stood by this photo of Eleanor Roosevelt, and in most of my life, my heroes have all been men, but she's my real hero. Eleanor Roosevelt said, "The future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams." Every kid should get the chance to believe in the beauty of their dreams. Now, I got to tell you, I'll be honest, I'm a safety security professional for 7 state universities. I don't cry at work. They do what I tell them to do. Even the president does what I tell them to do when there's an emergency. But when I talk about my family, I have a little post-traumatic stress. And then I have a little future fears for this generation of kids that are following Nicole. Everybody should get to believe in the beauty of their dreams. And quite frankly, people's fears made my dreams for my children become nightmares. And so many other families become nightmares because they fear things they don't understand. Why is anybody afraid of a 5-year-old? But it turned out okay. I mean, we're here, you know, we're having and I've learned so much from my children and the LGBT community around the nation that I could have never learned if I didn't go through this journey. And now, I wish I had the time to just share what I've learned with everybody. I love everybody now. I couldn't even say I love you in public 10 years ago. I love everybody in this room. I'd give every one of you a hug, all because of what I learned from my daughter and her brother and their friends. Next slide, Nicole. I'll never forget it. The people that have any type of transition, and Amy Ellis did such a great job with this book. We were afraid to write this book and let the whole world in to read our family, and for me in particular, the first 5 chapters. I don't fare very well, and my wife Kelly would say, "You really want people to know that?" And I go, "Well, how are we going to learn if we're not willing to share our weaknesses?" I'm not that weak anymore. I cry a lot more, but I'm a much stronger person, a better man, a better father, a better citizen, and a better university professional because what I've learned from the youth of America. I want to say thank you to you for the opportunity to finally open my ears and give up on my white male privilege and learn what real troubles are in America. And I would ask every student in this room as I turn it over to Nicole that the most important thing that I've learned from my children is the only way to make change is you got to get involved. You can't just talk about it in class. You can't just, chat about it in the union. You got to get involved. You have to volunteer. You have to vote. You have to write. Use your pens. Use your cameras. Do everything you can to make sure that we don't have any more moving backwards. So with that advice, and hopefully you'll listen. Nicole doesn't always listen to me, by the way. It's my honor to turn it over to my beautiful daughter, and I wish her brother was here because they have more courage than I ever thought possible. And the friends that they in this community are so courageous. I would just want to say thank you, and here is my lovely child who just got her hair done in like 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
Hi there. Can you guys all hear me all right? Awesome. Oh, no, I done messed it up. Oh, gosh. Whew. Wow, there's a lot more of you than when I was standing over there because I can see all of you now. Hi. So thank you guys so much for having us. Thank you guys for, listening to my dad. Dad, thank you so much for everything you've done and having the courage to cry in front of these lovely people. It means a lot. So I think before I really want to dive into everything, I want to introduce you guys to my family. Of course, you met my father. He had a lot of trouble when I first started trying to express to him who I was at the age of, 2, 3 years old. From the moment that I could really begin to identify as myself, I identified as a girl. And that was something that my father didn't know how to handle, and he didn't know how to understand something like that from a 3-year-old. My father is an ex-Republican, formerly, nationally known NRA shooting sports instructor, and he had these really set expectations for what raising identical twin boys was supposed to be like. He thought that we were going to have 2 baseball gloves, 2 footballs, and 2 hunting rifles, and that we were going to, do everything that good old boys do. And in fairness, we did do a couple of those things. I ended up being able to hit a home run better than my brother. And I could do it in heels. Yeah. We were just actually with my family for a funeral, unfortunately, in upstate New York. And I got to show my brother up. we were all playing wiffle ball with empty beer cans. And that's what family is, you know? But because of those expectations, it was harder for my father to wrap his head around having a transgender child. And so rather than deal with my flamboyance, should I say, he dove into his hobbies and chose not to focus on, everything that I was trying to express to him. We've mentioned my brother a couple times, and you can see a picture of my brother and I up there when I photobombed him. And my brother is the one person that I actually never had to come out to. People always ask me, how did you tell Jonas that you were trans? How did he react? And I'm like, he didn't. He just was there with me. And I don't know if that's because we are twins, we have some kind of sixth sense psychic connection, or because we've just been together for every minute of our lives and we've always just understood, who the other person was. But he's always been my biggest supporter. And when I was struggling to get my mom and my dad to understand that I was who I said I was, he was the one who was backing me up. And we were probably no more than 8 years old when I was having a discussion with my father, and my brother walked up and he said, "Dad, you need to face it. You have a son and a daughter." And so my brother and I have always been really close, but we go to separate colleges now, and so we don't get to see each other that often. I study studio art and women and gender studies, and he studies theater and psychology. So of course our conversations now more consist of him trying to psychoanalyze my hot-headed behavior and me trying to explain to him what his male privilege means. So needless to say, he's not answering my calls right now. And of course, that takes us to next slide, my mom, Kelly. My mother is my hero. When my father was trying to ignore all of the signs that I was sending him, my mom was really on her own. And she was really trying to figure out, what my daughter was, what my son at the time was trying to tell her. Because when I first started trying to express who I was to my parents, it was 2000, 2001. And as I'm sure a lot of you guys remember, there wasn't anything about transgender folks in the media, and there certainly wasn't any information about transgender children. And so my mother's Google searches kept getting more and more obscure and really specific, like to the point where she was searching 4-year-old with turtleneck around head likes to pretend he's a girl. Bowl cut. And she wasn't getting anything. And what she did find was all those old portrayals of transgender people in the media as drug addicts, sex workers, and dead bodies. And that's not something you want to find when you're trying to get information about your 3-year-old. And so she knew that the rest of the world wasn't necessarily a very accepting place at that time. So she wanted to make sure that no matter where Jonas and I were, and no matter where she and my father were, we would always have a safe place to come back to in her home. But the only problem with that was that my father at home still wasn't on board. What's the next slide? Next slide. Like I said, for as long as I can remember, I'd always identified as a girl. I liked hanging out with all the other girls in kindergarten, and I had eyes only for Barbies, girl toys, and makeup, all of which could be found in the pink aisle of Toys R Us. Every Halloween, I would ask my parents to be a girl. One year I wanted to be a princess, and another year I wanted to be a witch. And every year, the conversation turned towards negotiating with me. Okay, well, how's about you be a prince this year? So I was a prince that year. Another year I got to be a witch, but I had to be a witch who wore pants. Which, of course, all I wanted when I was 3 is to wear skirts, and of course now I really, really like pants. But, so I was trying to express every way I knew how, with the vocabulary of a 3-year-old, what I was expressing. And my parents just couldn't get it. Next slide. And so this is a video of Jonas and I when we were, what would you say, how old were we? 2.5. 2.5. With some pink, I don't know who told me that outfit was okay.
What you doing?
So I don't know who told me that skirt went with that hat, but I wore it. Choices. But as you can see from a really, really young age, I wasn't a boy. And a lot of folks to discredit and dispute trans youth say that, you can't possibly at a young age understand the intricacies of sex and gender. I don't think they're that intricate, do you? At the same age, my brother was realizing that he liked to play with trucks and action figures. I was realizing that I hated trucks and action figures. When you're old enough to know what you like, you're old enough to know what you dislike. And you're old enough to form your own identity. And what's really interesting is my brother and I are identical, like I said. And so you can, as Jonas and I grew up, you could really watch him go in one direction, like I said, and me go in a different one. And no one questioned my brother's identity. No one questioned his ability to understand his gender. No one questioned the fact that he asserted that he was a boy. But at the same age, people said I was too young. We moved to upstate Maine when Jonas and I were 5. And my mother had been trying to find as much as she could about, she didn't have a word for it at the time, but transgender people. And she finally got her hands on a book by Jennifer Finney Boylan, She's Not There, A Life in Two Genders. And she left it on the coffee table for my dad to read. Just, something to get the gears in his head moving a little bit. And he didn't pick it up. So she did the next best thing, being the crafty woman that she is. I talk about her like she's dead. Like she is. She moved the book to the bathroom. It disappeared. And years later, my dad was talking to Jennifer, and he said, I had my light bulb moment on the toilet. And she looked at him and said, "Oh, Wayne, where do you think I wrote it?" But, that was the first time my dad was really trying to, by himself, understand what I was trying to tell him. And so with my family mostly on board, we could start trying to make my transition public. My parents had recognized by the time I was 6 that presenting myself as a boy was, to say the least, damaging. I had severe anxiety and severe stress and severe anger issues, which may or may not persist to this day, but they were a lot worse when I was presenting as male. And so my parents understood that something needed to be done. So we worked with the school up in Orono, Maine, and we decided on making my transition gradual. And we spread it out over the course of 5 years, starting with wearing pink, growing my hair out, using the single-stall girls' bathrooms, changing my name, wearing skirts, and finally using the multi-stall girls' bathrooms. And this was really working really well for a long time. Well, as long as 4 years is. because everyone was, and this is the most important part, cooperating and communicating. We were having an open channel of discussion, and if people had questions, we could all address them together. And it didn't put any strain on the other students in my class or in the school because they were all eased into the transition with us. And you know, what we hadn't really taken into account was what we wanted to do if, say, a student moved to our school district, maybe halfway, mid-transition. But you know, we figured we'd cross that road when we got there. Of course, there were bullies, and I mean, there always are when you're a kid. And when you're being targeted because of your gender and because of your identity, it's really damaging. Next slide. And I experienced everything on this tree. I had to stop taking the bus to school because there was a girl on the bus who would call me it and refer to me like I wasn't human. And I would come home in tears telling my parents, you know, Mommy, Daddy, I'm a freak. The kids on the bus say I'm a freak. And having to deal with something like that in 4th grade, people can be cruel. But that wasn't anything compared to, you know, what we were going to face in 5th grade. A new student had moved to our school district, and his grandfather was a part of a special interest Christian right group. And they got word that a quote-unquote boy was using the girls' bathroom. And they didn't think that was okay at all. And so he had his grandson follow me around, make fun of me, and one day he followed me into the girls' bathroom. And he looked at me and he said, my grandpappy says that we don't have to have any faggots in our school. In 5th grade, we don't have to have any faggots in our school. And you know, looking back on it now, I thought, you know, and he was a big kid. And you know, I thought, you know, a kid following me into the bathroom and threatening me, that felt really familiar. Hit it. I'm Hermione Granger. But all jokes aside, I really like that joke. It helps. It's therapeutic. But you know, all jokes aside, I had no idea what that meant. But I came to realize that that was the beginning of all of my family's hard work coming undone. Because the school stopped working with us. They thought, you know, if Nicole using the girls' bathroom is the issue, then we'll just take Nicole out of the girls' bathroom. Problem solved. And so they took me out and they put me in a single stall in the staff bathroom. And you know, they tried to glitz it up and be like, oh, it's gonna be great. You're gonna get your own personal mirror. The staff bathroom was for adults. That mirror was really high up because I was in 5th grade. But this was an isolation act. This separated me from all of the other students. And I had no idea what was going on, and I had no idea why it was happening. I would overhear my parents talking, you know, how unfair it was that Nicole was being punished for something that she didn't do. And you know, I agreed with them. I was like, yeah, why am I being punished? And so I started using the girls' bathroom again. And nobody said anything, because that's where I belonged. But a couple months later, the grandson caught on and he made another stunt. And I was once again in the principal's office with her giving me a look and telling me that I knew that I wasn't supposed to go in there. And so home again, back to the staff bathroom, but this time with a bodyguard. It was called the Eyes On program. And it was supposed to protect me. But what it was a grown adult following a 5th grade through 6th grade child around 10 feet behind me, listening to all of my conversations and making sure that I used the right Nicole bathroom. And as you can imagine, that really singles out a student. If I wanted to get up and go to the bathroom from class, my teacher would have to stop me at the door and tell me to wait for whoever was following me that day in front of all of my classmates. As you can imagine, that was really humiliating. And all while that was going on, this is some of the press that was written about my family. And a lot of the headlines were about a boy using the girls' bathroom. And people would be interviewed, bullies would be interviewed, and they would say how, afraid they were of the boy who was go into the girls' locker room. I'm scared, what if we're on the same sports team and I have to share a locker room with him? Well, one, I don't play sports, so. And second of all, we're talking about a 5th grader. We're talking about a child. And we're trying to demonize this child like I was some kind of sexual predator. And that's a conversation that's happening a lot. And I'm sure you guys are aware. Folks like to say, we have to protect our children. We have to protect our wives, and we have to protect our daughters. What are you so afraid of? Why are you afraid of a 5th grader? Next slide. We eventually had to leave Orono and leave that school because we realized that the school couldn't and wouldn't be reasoned with. And so my mother, Jonas, and I had to move 2 hours south to Portland, Maine, and we went into hiding. And my parents had to tell Jonas and I, don't tell anyone who you are. Don't tell anyone that you're trans, or else we're going to have to move again. Because we were so, so terrified that what happened in Orono would happen again in Portland. And I had never had to be stealth before, that's what we called it. I never had to really be in the closet, because when I was little, it was part of my introduction. I would walk up to somebody and I would say, hi, my name's Wyatt. I'm a boy who wants to be a girl. What's your name? And they'd say, oh, hi, I'm Timmy. I like trucks and the color red. But I'd never had to hide such a huge part of who I was. And so I didn't know how to do that. And so I shut down through 7th and 8th grade. The girl who once liked to go on play dates and have friends over for sleepovers and visit her friends' houses wasn't doing any of that anymore. I didn't invite my friends over. I didn't go out and do anything with any of the other kids. I went to school and I came home because I just didn't know how to be friends, how to make friends when I couldn't be authentically myself. And then when I was in 8th grade, a bill very, very similar to North Carolina's bill HB2 was presented to the state of Maine, and it was called LD 1046. And it was the exact same thing as HB2. It would have required all people in the state of Maine to use the bathroom of their biological sex, meaning that I would have to go back into the boys' bathroom. And so we lobbied at the State House for 2 days. I missed 2 days of school, yes, but I had to talk to every representative, every congressman, I don't know what the official titles are there, but I talked to a lot of old men who really didn't want to listen to an 8th grade 11-year-old tell them, what to do. But we talked to every person in that state house. And I walked up to them and I said, hi, my name's Nicole Maines, and I'm transgender. And this is a clip from Emily Kane talking about...
Systematic report. A roll call is in order. Chair recognizes the representative from Orono, Representative Kane.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to oppose the pending motion and to speak briefly. The proposition in this bill related to unlawful public accommodations and legitimate privacy concerns is not about bathrooms nor locker rooms to me. It is not about pulling threads in an unraveling of the Human Rights Act, and it is not an abstract concept about transgendered people or transgendered person. But it is for me about Cam and for Nicole and others like them. And then there's Nicole. Nicole grew up in Orono. She has a twin brother. Her case is well known to the Human Rights Commission in Maine, and her story was told eloquently by her father in front of the Judiciary Committee at the hearing on this bill. I've had the privilege of getting to know Nicole and her family for years, as they worked in the community of Orono to educate the community and to make sure that when their daughter went to school every day, she could do so like any other kid. Nicole and her family have had to leave Orono, and they now live in a different part of the state where Nicole goes to school every day like any other kid, absolutely afraid that someone might find out that she's transgendered. Because Nicole is stealth. That's the term that this kid had to learn in order to go to school every day to feel normal. And sitting with Nicole just a few weeks ago here at the State House, you might have seen her in the hallway and you wouldn't have known that Nicole is stealth or that she is a transgendered person. I've been lucky to get to know the story of Nicole and her family and learn about how open Nicole is to talking to you or anyone else about her experience, and about how this type of backward step with the Maine Human Rights Act puts in jeopardy her ability to go to school every day and learn, her ability to go to the mall and shop like any other kid, her ability to go with her parents to a show or to the movies and simply use the bathroom. This bill is unnecessary, and I believe will cause more problems than we even know now.
That bill was defeated. And we managed to change the mind of the co-sponsor of the bill. But you know, I think that was possible because all of those people, when I went up to them and I introduced myself as a transgender girl, they all had like this look of like shock on their face, and they kind of like, they looked at me, and then they looked down, and then they looked at me again. But you know, because I don't fit a type of, you know, portrayed image. I wasn't what they expected. And we need more of that. We need more of breaking down stereotypes about transgender people, because those were created by false representations in the media. Transgender people don't have to look a certain way. We don't have to act a certain way. And we don't have to be anything. But you know, the way that transgender people have been talked about, and the way that transgender people are being portrayed in all of these bills and, you know, hypothetical scenarios of public bathroom disasters are as men in dresses looking for an excuse to prey on women and young girls. Now, I don't want to, you know, be telling stories out of school, but I think the ones who are the most threatening in public bathrooms are a couple of senators, but, you know, whatever. But you know, there are so many misconceptions about transgender people, and we need to break them down. And that can be done through conversation, through sharing stories, through being open and accepting so that transgender people don't feel like they have to live in hiding anymore. We had filed lawsuit against that middle school on the grounds of unlawful discrimination, and that went all the way to the Maine State Supreme Court. And that had never been done before. And I got to attend the hearing with the rest of my family, and for the first time I had gotten to hear up close and personal what was being said about me as a transgender student. And for a long time I had been bitter towards my parents, for not letting me in on the conversations, for not letting me in on the closed door meetings with the school administration. But I understand why now. Because the rhetoric that the school was using was appalling. And I was being referred to as a male student and kind of spoken of like I hadn't gone there or been a person, like I hadn't been the student who actively participated in class and drama club, and like I wasn't the student that, they gave false smiles to and waved to in the hallway every morning while actively trying to take away my rights. But, I've been speaking of this school like it was the school, but it wasn't. It was the administration. The teachers knew who I was. The teachers knew me as more than the trans kid on the attendance list. They knew me as the girl who struggled with math, always doodled in her notebooks, and was way, way too loud. And they were the ones who knew what bathroom I was supposed to be in. But to the administration, I was just a name on an attendance list. I was an idea, and I was really, really easy to take advantage of because I wasn't a person to them. And we ended up winning that case after 5 years. But it makes me wonder, how could it have been avoided? Because the school was doing the right thing in the first place. Everything was going really well until we faced opposition. And I realized that this kind of thing can be avoided by just having, transgender topics and even just LGBTQ topics be part of the conversation. People would have known what to do. The administration would have known what to do. My parents and I would have known what to do if trans people had been part of this conversation. If transgender people were represented in the media as more than, drug addicts and sex workers. People would have known what to do if transgender people were talked about like people. And now, even in the last 10 years, you can see how much ground we've covered in such a short period of time. Transgender people are being represented on popular television shows like you see above. This was an episode, does that actually play? Oh, really? Technology. This was an episode that I did. I guest starred on one episode of Royal Pains, and I got to play a transgender girl who was struggling with acceptance from her parents and faced some medical issues when self-administering estrogen.
So, the chest CT confirmed that you have pulmonary emboli. You'll have to stay overnight, but the blood thinners are already working. We'll get you back to your dancers as soon as possible.
Thank you.
You got it. So, Anna, an ER doctor will be coming to do a full exam, including a pelvic, and an admissions officer needs to help clarify your parents' health insurance. There is no Anna on their policy. They only list an Abe.
Yeah, that's out of date.
So, you were born a boy.
No, the ER doctor won't agree, but I've always been a girl.
Gotcha. How long have you been Anna?
On and off, at home since I was little, but everywhere full-time starting this year.
And at camp?
It's been so cool. no one there ever knew me before, so to them I'm just me. How did you guess? Was it my voice?
I'm a doctor. It's my job to notice things, like the waxing rash on your chest. But if I weren't treating you, I would never have known.
Yeah. I was always teased for being too feminine.
Do your parents know that you're taking estrogen?
My mom tries to be supportive, but she insisted I see a therapist. And made me promise not to start hormones until I turned 17 and not to push for surgery.
But
A few months ago, I started taking estrogen behind her back.
self-administering.
It's just a pill.
Well, sometimes it's not that simple. We should run some tests.
So I just want to start off by saying that Mark Feuerstein has like the most sea blue eyes ever, and they're like oceans. And that scene was like, oh my gosh. Okay, but you know, that's just one of now an increasing number of trans representations in the media. We have, you know, folks like Janet Mock and Laverne Cox, which, God, thank you for Laverne Cox, right? Oh my gosh, the queen. But, you know, portrayals on shows like Orange is the New Black are really important because transgender people being accurately represented in popular media so that not just a fixed audience is, you know, getting that kind of representation and that information. Now, transgender people are shown to not just those in the LGBTQ community, but now cisgender people and heterosexual people are more and more now getting the information they need on transgender folks, and they now are beginning to more and more recognize us as people because the outlets are portraying us as such. Which is great, but we need more of it. And we need it younger. If we had had the information and accurate representations of transgender folks in kids' shows, and we had had transgender issues being talked about in the context of youth, maybe we would have been able to avoid a lawsuit. Maybe we would have been able to live with my dad for the last 6 years of my education. But we didn't. And now folks think that, you know, there's a certain age you have to be transgender. That, you know, just like Anna in the show, you know, her parents wanted her to wait to start hormones, which we can't do. Because after puberty hits, there's a funny thing about testosterone, that once it gets its scrubby little paws on you, it's really, really hard to reverse. And having an identical twin brother was terrifying because of that. Because I was able to see the bullet that I so narrowly dodged. And thank goodness that my parents were on board. Because if they weren't, I might not have been able to get the medical coverage that I needed. And that's the story for a lot of trans youth. And we're really on the clock for this stuff. And while I'm talking about medical issues, I think it's really, really important to note that not every transgender person seeks medical coverage. And not every transgender person wants to go through hormones and gender reassignment surgery. And that's completely their choice. But you know, we can't expect anyone to do anything. And we can't expect anyone to seek out a kind of medical anything. But it's important that we have those medical procedures covered because they can be life-saving. They are life-saving. If I had to grow up looking like my brother, I mean, already I'm so much prettier than him, but if I had to, you know, my parents saw what living as a boy was doing to me when I was 6. What would living as a boy have done to me when I was 20? And so that's why it's really, really important to cover trans medical jargon, I don't know, proper words. But it's so important to cover that stuff because it is life-saving. If your child was diagnosed with, a form of cancer, wouldn't you want to go through every possible route to save your child's life? It's the exact same thing with transgender issues. This needs to be covered and this needs to be available because there are so many transgender folks who don't have the finances to cover this stuff by themselves. Just the hormone blocking shot, which was a once a month shot, for us was $1,600 a month. People can't afford that. That's ridiculous. Next slide. This was a clip from the Trans List, which was another amazing visual representation of gender as a spectrum. The Trans List was an HBO documentary. It featured 11 trans individuals just telling their stories, trans and gender nonconforming individuals telling their stories. And I describe it as a visual representation of gender as a spectrum. And it was so amazing, and I encourage you guys to check it out, not just because I'm in it, but because it was so well done. It was done by Timothy Greenfield Sanders. The interviews were all conducted by Janet Mock, and it was so well done, and the questions were so thoughtful, and people sharing their stories. There was something beautiful about it, in that all of the stories were different and unique, but at the same time the same. And so I really encourage you guys to check it out because it's just so reassuring to see, and this came out in December, so it was like just after the election. And so it was really, I miss Obama. It was really amazing to see, in a time when folks really needed it, to see gender being represented accurately and freely. And even with, all the ground we've covered, and even with all the new representations of media and the new conversations that are being had, there's still a lot of work to be done. Especially, regarding my age, college. When I started looking for colleges and applying to college, we really, really had to be careful and to do our research because there are so many places that don't offer, trans protections and don't have trans-inclusive bathroom policies and room policies. Next slide. And so I eventually ended up, ironically, going back to Orono, Maine for my undergrad, mostly because my dad works there, and I got a tuition waiver. But what the University of Maine did wasn't something that was difficult. It was something that any college can do. And they asked me, what works for you? They said, do you want a single room? Do you want to use, the common girls' bathrooms? Do you want a roommate? And we really went through it, and we, tried to figure out what was going to work best for me and what was going to put me in a place where I was most comfortable. And that's really, really easy. And that's really important. And that goes back to, why working with my middle school had worked when I was in elementary school. Because people were talking and people were communicating and asking questions. And I can't stress how important that is. Because when folks just ask questions and people have an open channel of dialogue, and there are no wrong answers, well, there are wrong answers, but there are no stupid questions, that's really freeing and liberating. Because trans issues, no matter how much ground we've covered, are still tricky. And there are still a lot of unanswered questions, and there are a lot of folks who, they don't know what the proper course of action should be. So it's important to have that kind of open discussion. It's important to ask, what works for you? What works for us? How can we get the most out of this experience? I think that's the same slide. And then on a federal and state level, there are a lot more bills like HB2. And it's scary. Because in more than half the country, they don't have, state protections for transgender people. And in January, the federal protections were taken away by Mr. Trump. I'm not going to call him President Trump, and you can't make me. They were taken away. And so now the safety of transgender people is back up to the states. And so now in more than half the country, I could be fired. I could be kicked out of my house. I would have to use whatever bathroom they tell me to, because I wouldn't have rights as a person. Because I wouldn't be a person anymore, and going back to the bus, I would now be considered by the state an it. And so we really need to be having these conversations. And we need to be having them with people we meet on the bus. We need to be having them with our family at Thanksgiving. We need to be having those tough conversations. And heads up, if you have those tough conversations with your family at Thanksgiving, film them and send them to me, because I want to see that, because it's always funny. Because Aunt Ruth always says something stupid, and everyone always kind of looks at Aunt Ruth and they're like, just eat your stuffing, Aunt Ruth. But these are the conversations that need to be had. We need to let people know that no matter who you are or how you identify, you will be accepted in the United States of America. We don't need to make America great. We need to keep it great. Because it was great when people could just be themselves. And it was great when people would be accepted no matter who they were, what gender, what age, what race, what religion. It's a melting pot here, and that's what it's about. And so have those conversations. Make it known that you are a safe place, that you're an ally, that you're a member of the community. Let people know that you're someone who they can talk to, and that you can just be a shoulder to cry on and an ear to listen. Make yourself a safe place. And so, speaking of futures, hopefully, my kids, maybe, definitely my brother's kids. My brother's kids and my brother's grandchildren will have a safe place, and they won't be questioned, and they won't feel the stress of having to fit in a certain box. Because as it is now, we've set kids up to fail with the rigid expectations, the one-size-fits-all mentality when it comes to gender and identity. One size does not fit all in fashion. You know what I'm talking about? Like those dresses that are like, oh my gosh, one size fits all. No, they don't. And that's for how many sizes? And there are 7 billion people on the planet. And so why should 2 male and female shaped boxes work for everybody? Have you guys seen on Facebook those videos they're like the gender reveal parties, and they look really messy and expensive? And they pop the balloons, and there's glitter, and they're like, oh my gosh, yay, binary. Right? From even before a child is born, they're set up to fail by either saying, you're a boy or you're a girl, and there is no ifs, ands, or buts, in betweens, upside downs, or rounds again. We're setting kids up to fail. And it's not fair that we are punishing transgender and gender nonconforming kids for not meeting the really rigid expectations that we've set for them. It's not fair that we make trans kids wait while our school systems and our government catches up to them and catches up to their identities. We should already be there and waiting for them to present themselves. We should have these policies in place. Schools need to have these policies in place. Because believe it or not, there is a 100% chance that all schools, all people at some point will be I say dealing like it's a bad thing, will be experiencing and having interactions with a transgender person. My father did not think that he was going to have to, now I can say it, would not have to deal with a transgender child, but no. Yeah. But, he did. And that's why it's important. People need to have this information so they can be ready for whether it's their, teacher or their student, their child or their grandchild or their cousin or, what have you. People will be ready. People can say, I support you. And people can ask what works for you. Thank you guys so much. Awesome. Is this on? Yes. Hi. Okay. So now we have a couple more minutes, and so what we usually do is we do like a question and answer period. We have one of these really. I don't know if you guys saw this before. I don't know if you've been to like talks here before, but I've never had this before. It's called a catch box, and it's a microphone that you throw into the audience, and I think it's the coolest thing ever. So. Questions, and I hope and you know what, this is going to be a teamwork thing. If I can't throw it far enough, you guys are going to have to help me, and we're going to work together as a team.
I'm a safety director. I'm not sure I like this idea.
Well, I have no idea if it's on, but
Test, it is.
awesome.
Nicole, thank you. I'm in the process of learning a lot about non-binary issues. And I am wondering what kind of support you found. I know there are, like, in high schools here in Salem, there are gay and straight alliances for gay and lesbian people.
Yeah.
Did you find any support in those communities when you were younger or even now?
Yeah. So did I find any support in GSAs in high school and middle school? And so in my high school, we had a GSTA. We changed the name to be more inclusive. But the thing with GSAs is a lot of the time they tend to be pockets in high school communities, and they tend to be, kind of safe havens for LGBTQ people, but they kind of flock there and they stay there. And so it's really important in GSAs, and I've always had really good experiences with them and the folks, and they have always been amazing and supportive. But I think the important thing with GSAs is they then need to branch out and really, root themselves in the rest of the school and do programs and try to, muster up that support from the rest of the community in their school so that the GSA is less of a pocket and more of just like, this is where we meet. But the entire school can really be a safe place. But yeah, I've had a lot of really good experiences with the GSTA, especially at my school. They were really, really great, and of course they were all my friends, and so we all just kind of went there and eat lunch. But yeah, that was a good question.
I would add that allies are so important. Jonas, he was on the lacrosse team. There's a lot of testosterone on the lacrosse team. And, things would be said in the locker room. Of course, there was so much news and drama in our state. It was amazing to watch those young men start to get it because Jonas was on the team. And that's where allies' role comes into play, that they can have those discussions in other arenas to really help move things forward. And you might also want to mention camp.
Oh, camp. So especially for trans youth and gender nonconforming youth, there is a camp called Camp Aranudek, and it was founded in 2010 by Nick Teisch, and it is one of my favorite places on earth. It's just a summer camp. It's nothing special, but it's for trans and gender nonconforming youth, because so often we don't get to experience sleepaway camp, and we don't get to just go have fun and swim, do arts and crafts. and we don't get that camp experience, and that's what Camp Aeronautic is. And so when I started going there, it was like a week long, 40 kids. And by the next year, it was 60 kids. The third year, it was like 120 kids. And so it's just grown and grown, and they had to get a new space because it keeps growing. And I just got an email from Nick asking if I wanted to be a counselor there this year, and unfortunately, I couldn't make it. But he was telling me that it's now like a 1 week, 2 week, or 3 week camp. And I'm like, where was 3 weeks when I was like 13 and like had no friends? But it's an amazing place, and if any of you guys are, have trans kids in your lives, and there's also a leadership camp for kids 16 to 18, and which I went to, and it was amazing, and just everything, the aeronautic team is so supportive and incredible, and it's not like there are a couple of like trans counselors, but there are like ally counselors, and everyone there is just so supportive and nice, and my favorite part about it is it's not, like, let's sit down and do workshops about like being trans and let's talk about our transness. Like, those conversations happen, but they aren't mandatory and they aren't, sort of scheduled. They like come up in arts and crafts, or they come up at the pool, or they come up, late night in the cabins. Aeronautic is really just about like, okay, you're trans, cool, lived it, learned it, loved it. Just go be a kid. And that's so, so special. And I feel like it's something that wasn't really talked about a lot, but it's such a safe haven for these kids, and I love it so much.
My dream is NRA camp for LGBTQ kids. I'm working on it. I'm getting a little resistance, as you can imagine. But
No.
we're starting with bows. We'll move forward.
You might actually have a lot of us really like
That's right.
bows. We feel like Legolas. We're like, yes!
Hi, Nicole. Thanks for speaking today. I really appreciated hearing you. I drove down from Portland. My name is Denise Chantrell Dubois, and I'm transgender, and I came out when I was 48 years old. Mm-hmm. And I just want to make a comment, not necessarily a question, but what you went through in your early years and what I went through in my early years, there's a lot of similarities. I knew at age 4. I guess the big difference was it was 1958, and it was southern Wisconsin. It was a different world back then, a totally different world. But I call us survivors.
Yeah.
People who've made it through the rigmarole. I have a book coming out later this year that's being published nationally, and it's out in August actually. Talks about a lot of the same things you have in your book. Oh, the name of my book, Self-Made Woman.
Self-Made Woman, look for it, pick it up.
I'm proud of it. I never expected it to be published nationally, but I just want to thank you very much today for being here and doing what you're doing out here, and talking to everybody in this audience. It's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And of course, I want to say thank you, because, there's a kind of innocent bravery that comes with trans youth. But transitioning at, what'd you say, 48? That's one of the most brave things I can think of. And Denise?
Yes.
Give a hand for Denise. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I'm going to pick up your book. You guys should pick up her book. I can't wait. I don't have the cube anymore. Work together. Yes.
Hi, Nicole. Thanks for being here. You're a motivation and an inspiration to all of us. As a father of a 24-year-old trans daughter, some of my biggest fears when we first were transitioning and dealing with it all was the extremely high suicide rate of trans people and the retaliation against trans people. My daughter just texted me the other day that 12 trans girls of color have been killed this year so far. Mm-hmm. Have you seen improvement in a lower amount of suicide rates or anything in the last years because of awareness and public awareness and those type of things?
It's definitely going down. And And thank you guys for supporting your daughter. Thank you guys so much. Because having, you can be accepted at school and you can be accepted by your friends, but being accepted at home and by your family is so important, and a lot of the times it's really, really hard to get to that place. And so you guys are doing a world of good for your daughter. And thank you so much. And I know she appreciates it so much. And the suicide rates and the rates of violence are way too high, but the suicide rates have definitely been going down. Because of folks like you, because of parents who are supporting their children, because of schools who are getting on board. The world is becoming a more accepting place. And so now, we can really see that light at the end of the tunnel, and we know that it does get better. And the violence, is still, I can never say that, the violence is down and it's good, because violence anywhere is never good. And this current administration has promoted a lot of hate. But, seeing you guys in this room and, just seeing you guys be so supportive, it makes me, realize that there is hope. And that, no matter what our, POTUS thinks, I know, the people are supportive and the people have each other's backs. And that's something that's special and beautiful and important.
Oh, one last thing, Nicole. Our daughter leaves June 23rd to be a camp counselor at the camp you just mentioned.
Oh, I love that! Yes!
I would also say thank you to the state of Oregon. You guys are an oasis. California and Oregon, on the East Coast it's Maine and Massachusetts and a little bit in Vermont, but I know people that have moved to Oregon just for the reasons that you guys cover medical care, all of that. It's just, you're leading the way. This college is leading the way. So we just got to keep it moving. And I'll shake your hand when we're all done.
Thank you.
And so,
some more back there. Yes! Loving this cube.
Okay, does this help? Okay. If you don't mind me asking, what was it like or finding healthcare providers at such a young age for the kind of healthcare you needed? And
healthcare providers,
what was it like?
Dad?
well, I'm actually the national keeper of our health care provider spreadsheet for there's a group we started probably 5 years ago, parents of transgender children. When we started, there were 60 families. Now there's 5,100 families in there. And so there are more and more. And actually one of the bottlenecks was counselors who could do the mental health evaluations. Nicole is one of the first patients in the country. We actually left New York State. We've always been leaving to find better ground. And so she could be one of the first patients at the Boston Children's Hospital Gender Clinic. Now there's 45 clinics in the nation. There's not one in Arkansas yet, or West Virginia or Alaska, but they're getting out there, and so they're at least spread around the country. But just think of a young family with a gender non-conforming child that lives in a trailer park in Arkansas, how hopeless they must feel. Right. And we try to find them help, because there are people like Denise around in communities and small towns all over that can at least talk to them and give them hope. I can tell you, we have in Portland, Maine now the Barbara Bush Gender Clinic. So how's that for making it?
I love irony.
Yeah. So I get a little emotional and tearful, but we have made progress too. We just can't go backwards. That's the key. And it's your generation that's going to keep us moving forward. And but yeah, those clinics are out there, and more people are being trained every. There's not enough training for medical students. We got to do a better job of that, and nurses. So, thank you. Let's do your arms. Come on now. That's pretty good. All right.
It's been a wonderful experience listening to both of you today. And I'm wondering how long you have been speaking to groups like this and what plans you have for going forward, because I really believe that if people could see both of you and hear your story, that it would dispel a lot of fears and misconceptions, and it would really help build a lot of compassion.
Well, thank you very much. We have been speaking, it's weird. I think we first started when I was a freshman in high school, and that was really just, we went to a banquet and we were asked to speak because, we were friends with Glad, who was running it, and we were like, okay, yeah, totally, we can go, we can help you guys out. And it just kind of sort of became this thing where, friends would ask us, we would go, and then somewhere along the line it started to snowball, and now I'm up here across the country, and it's been so weird and so surreal. But we recently signed on with a speakers bureau who now handles all that, so it's not my dad, late night, green visor on his computer being like, ugh, answering endless emails. So it's definitely gotten a lot easier, and we're able to reach out. And we speak to a lot of colleges.
Good.
I think that college students, I don't know, maybe if it's just because of my age, and I like speaking to, my peers, but colleges and universities across the country have always been kind of safe havens in little bubbles. And so going around and, spreading that information to folks so they can go back to wherever they're from and, spread that and have a chain reaction, I think, is always one of my favorite parts. So yeah, a lot more speaking in the future.
We do a lot of colleges and universities because of the book and Campus Read, but we've also done hospitals and lawyers and nurses associated, and even churches. We went to one, what's the movie with Gregory Peck and the people are hanging out with the church views? Yeah. So we did one, and they had it was a college university, but their lecture hall was a church, and as a safety director, I was counting. It's like there's overload or overcapacity, And but every time we speak, it's powerful. And I know exactly what you're saying, because we're in California, and we got done, I turned around, 60 people were ready to hug us, and this one woman hugged me harder than I've ever been hugged in my life. She wouldn't stop crying, and I was crying, and then her husband was crying. If I could quit my real job and actually still be able to eat, I'd do it every day and I want to go to the battleground states. I don't want to come here. You guys get it. I love you guys, but I'd love to be. I'm a graduate. I went to grad school in West Virginia. I've been pushing the dean of the grad school there to get me there. I want to go to those hard places and have the hard conversations, because I'm just a hillbilly. I can talk their language, and that's what we got to do. And I'm just trying to figure it out how to live two lives, and go to college at the same time. But there's other stories, there's other families behind us, and they're all powerful.
Yeah. It's really activism is about sharing stories, because as people, that's all we got. And so there's absolutely no reason that, all of you in this room can do what we're doing. It's just going out and sharing stories with folks and, talking about lived experiences. And that stuff's powerful because it's real. So, a lot more of it.
Any other questions? You didn't have to throw it.
I made it easy on you. Hi, my name is Brittany. Man, you're just so articulate and such a great speaker and beautiful. And I was just moved to tears watching some of those home videos. And my husband's sitting next to me. We have 3 kids of our own. And just as a parent, I just looked to you. I'm like, where was your community? Did you guys have friends? How did you guys, was it just you and your spouse? How did that work for you guys as a team?
Well, some of those fears are from earlier. I was having a hard time keeping composure, but we lost a lot of people early, and family too. But my parents were amazing. They didn't get it, but they loved their grandbabies, and they were scared to death. They just didn't tell us. I'm sure when we left, they were freaking out, you know, but we did. We had some close friends because we were strategic moving to Maine, college, university, you know, LGBT friendly and all that. It was ironic that we had to end up suing the community that I worked in. And, but we had a neighbor from Ohio State, was a football player. He came to our driveway one day when Nicole was 7, and their daughter was the same age, and he goes, Wayne, I don't get it. I mean, you know, what are we going to do? What are we going to do about bathrooms? And I said, Todd, I'm looking up at the guy, you know, he's like 280, no neck. And I go, Todd, you know us, you know, there's no problem here. And he had to think about it for a minute. And then he said, you know what, you're good people. One of the problems he saw was the bathroom door had been ripped off one of the stalls. I said, let's go down and put the bathroom door back on. It's that, like Nicole said, it's that simple. Then our other neighbor was a Marine tank commander, and his kids were 3 or 4 years younger than my kids, and my kids protected his kids. So they grew up with us. And then our neighbor across the street was a devout Baptist. So they screwed up vocabulary a lot, but they really had our back, you know. You have to grow up and live that. So those were our, and then of course I had the dean of students at school, you know, to go cry. And my best friend in Maine was our biggest supporter, and I was on his graduate, he got his graduate degree in peace studies with the U.S. Marshal. So I do a lot of talks in law enforcement, and I did a talk for 50 cops in Gettysburg. It was leadership with an undertone of LGBT rights. And they do, the Department of Justice has this canned program for civil rights, and the key instructor said to this group of men and women in law enforcement, what does the 1964 Civil Rights Act do? It protects all Americans. And they said, yeah. And I got up later and I apologized, and I said, I have to disagree with you because it doesn't protect all Americans. And man, half of those police officers came up to me afterwards, and I was in tears, and they gave me their business cards, and they said, if Nicole ever gets in trouble in Fort Kent, Maine, which is right near the Canadian border,
You caught me smuggling!
give me a call, and we'll take care of her. I mean, she's not perfect. I assume sooner or later I'm going to get one of those phone calls. You know? So, but that's a great question. Here's what I've learned. When our community left us, when there was so much drama, it was the LGBTQ community, not my Republican friends. The people that came to my aid had purple hair and nose rings. I mean, I didn't, you know, I was like, oh. And, but now I realize, you know, it doesn't matter what your cover is. Those people came to our aid, and that's who my people are now. I mean, that's who I hang out with. When, you know, look at this haircut. It doesn't really fit in, but everybody, they just want everybody to have the same life. So, long answer, I'm sorry. Yeah. Here's somebody down this way. You're a lefty, a righty?
Hi.
Hello.
It's really good to hear what you're all saying. My niece is trans. She's 17. She's only recently begun transitioning and all. She's a middle child, and she is very used to trying to be invisible and not rock the boat, not create drama. She's the peacekeeper, and that's working against her a lot right now. Is there anything that you would advise her? She's such a peacekeeping kid, but she needs to ask for the help that she needs.
Yeah, well, you know, I think I'd say to her, there's nothing, you know, really aggressive about just being yourself. There's nothing that would necessarily rock the boat, I don't think, with, you know, just being who you are. I don't know. It sounds like you guys are supportive. Is her parents supportive, or do they know?
They know, and they are they're supportive in that she had to really talk them into it, and they finally got there, and she got to start hormones, which was a huge relief. But they basically, she has to, their attitude is kind of, anything that you want done, you have to do all of the legwork to prove that you want it. We're not going to pitch in and do anything with you, because then it might turn out that it was our idea and not yours. So, and she feels overwhelmed when she looks at all the legal paperwork and stuff, and she wants to change her name, and they're like, well, wait till you're legal age. And
I think that, I think she was doing the right thing, like sitting down. There's nothing wrong, I think, with having conversations with her parents, because that legal stuff, I've seen a couple of it.
You might reach out to transactive.org here in Oregon, Jen Burleton. Yeah.
I love Jen Burleton.
They can really help guide you. I mean, we're not professionals in that area. I mean, I had to do it for this one, but it can be, and there's a lot of cool kids hanging out there, her age, college kids. Yeah, you're lucky. Transactive.org. You'll find it, and they're close by. They really.
And I'd really.
She's actually in Utah.
Oh, in Utah?
I
Yeah,
know.
but Transactive can still help.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're a national organization. It's not important to me anymore.
Well, it's really just, I would encourage her to keep having those conversations with her parents, because I think that, if she doesn't want to rock the boat and she wants to, keep the peace, I think just sitting down, at the dinner table and just having open conversations and having those open channels of dialogue, that's not aggressive. It's not, I don't think it rocks any boats. It's just really like talking about stuff, just asking for help.
That's really hard for her.
Yeah.
I wish there was something that
Maybe she could start writing, keeping a journal or something. That's what I do. A lot of the stories in our book, I had a professional journal my whole life. I got thousands of short stories in there that nobody's ever going to see. My English teacher, I don't want her to see them either, but they're good stories. But it might help to just write down and find a local group.
Thank you.
That are right-wing, pro-Trump supporters, which I can forgive sometimes and others can't. But I get into arguments with some cousins and stuff, particularly about transgender issues. And having read the book, I've got some more talking points to come up with, but I think even just yesterday, something came through about a transgender girl that won the Connecticut state track meet or something like that. And the talking points around transgenders, particularly male to female trans, being in sports and how to talk to people about the unfair competitiveness that would bring. Yeah. So if somebody's brain is female but their body is male and they have 30% more muscle mass, how does that make it a fair sport?
Yeah. I actually just had the same conversation with my boyfriend's mother. Fun fact, I was on his way to his house for the first time and we were in the car and he said, "Nicole, I have to tell you something. My parents are Trump supporters and they don't know you're trans." What? Why didn't you say that before? No, but I actually, I was over at his house over Memorial Day weekend, and he and I had an amazing conversation with his mother, and it was really progressive in that she asked the same question, and I really just said, I played sports. I tried to play sports, and I was on the girls' teams, and those questions came up, and it's really, you got to ask yourself. And I wasn't good at all. Like, everyone was better than me, so like that wasn't even an issue because like I sucked. But I kept the beds real warm. But I told her it's not really that much of an issue having one person on any team because you gotta. I told her you kind of have to look at it in perspective. Like, is it more important like to have somebody like on a team, or is like, should you put one person on this team or that team, or should you really respect that person and their identity? Like, some people have more muscle mass than other folks. Like, some people are just better at sports than others, and I don't think that should be boiled down to gender, and it usually isn't. I don't think. I don't think it makes, personally, that much of a difference. And maybe that's just because of my lived experience of sucking at sports. But
I would just add that the Olympic committees, they've been dealing with this for a lot of years, and they have very good guidelines. And in the younger kids' age, it really isn't an issue. But even in Maine, the Athletic Association for High Schools really developed a policy. I bet you Portland or Oregon's is strong too, and there are guidelines to not only address that, but also to address, people always bring up the safety card. I'm a safety guy. I really don't like when people use the safety card in the wrong way, even for work. You know, that somebody's going to come to your president sooner and later say, that's not safe, you know, and they really just want new carpet, you know, so you probably dealt with that already. So, but you got to walk through those discussions.
Yeah.
You know, and if you go to the Huffington Post, I often write for them, and my articles are about moose hunting and sports with a LGBT twist. So send them those, because I've had to have those discussions in our deer camp with Vietnam vets. So they all support Nicole now. You know, if they didn't, I'd leave them in the big woods and they'd never get out.
Could you tell I was starting to ramble?
Yes.
Yeah.
Any other questions? That's nobody. Oh, there we go. Throw that cube. Speaking of sports, let's see your arm.
Yes.
What amazing technology.
Right.
That's great.
So I have 3 different questions.
Party.
So my first question is, what are you studying in college?
I study women and gender studies and studio art, which I can't believe I forgot to tell that joke. It's my favorite joke. I study studio art and women and gender studies, and my brother studies theater and psychology.
Ooh.
And so now all of our conversations are like him trying to psychoanalyze like my hot-headed behavior and like me explaining to him like male privilege. So like, I can't believe I forgot to tell that joke. It's my favorite.
Yeah, thanks. You're a good straight man.
What? What?
What?
You're a good straight man. You set her up for the joke.
Oh. You said straight, and I was like,
oh yeah.
Don't assume.
No.
Actually, I'm gay, but it's all good.
That's right.
It's all
you
right.
were Johnny Carson was before your time, but you were the Ed McMahon.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I guess that kind of connects to my second question of, excuse me, what do you see yourself in 10 years from now?
Oh God, where do I see myself in 10 years?
No pressure.
Where do I?
I can answer that.
Yeah. Well, definitely more speaking. We just signed on with the Speakers Bureau, and so we're doing a lot more of this. You know, now it's not like my dad, like up at 1 a.m, like answering a ton of emails, like green visor going like, ah. And I'm on my way, actually, right after, tomorrow I'm flying down to LA to hopefully do some more acting. I guest starred on Royal Pains a couple years ago, and so I'm going to try to do more stuff like that. Hopefully, like, up that trans representation in media, get trans folks playing trans characters, that kind of stuff. Woo.
Awesome.
So hopefully I'm doing that in 10 years.
Great. This is kind of a weird question. How old are you?
I am 19.
Same!
Yes!
98?
97, October.
Close enough.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Anybody else?
Oh. All right. Work together.
I'm gonna, where I think she should be in 10 years, have her college degree,
Oh.
a good job, maybe working in law, and sending money to her parents.
My parents told me get a good job, but my heart really says marry rich, so I'm kind of, but you know, I see that, I'm glad you see that for me. I see something else.
Thanks to everyone who was able to get this weird cube over to this tiny corner of the room. I do have a question. It's kind of long, so I have notes over here.
Okay.
So that's why I'm just like glancing over there. So you've spoken really beautifully about trans representation and why it's so very important. And I feel like I've been seeing a lot more trans representation in the past few years, but I've also been seeing a lot of like cisgender people talking about trans experiences, or cisgender loved ones talking about their experiences with transgender loved ones. And sometimes it does feel like to me like there's really a limited amount of space and a limited amount of attention that society has for these issues. So like sometimes it feels like, oh, maybe we should be prioritizing this differently.
Yeah.
Given that you do have a loved one up there on the stage, I don't know how you totally want to answer this question, but
don't worry, she'll be honest.
No, I totally get what you're saying. Like, I think that there definitely is like there are different priorities in our country right now. Especially, I was having this conversation with my dad during the election, and he was talking about, well, I really, really want a strong military. I really, really want that. And I'm like, okay, well, that's good, but don't you think we should start by making sure that everybody else in the country has basic human rights? So it's really like, you gotta think like, different folks have different priorities, and different folks want to hear different stuff. And I'm trying to like figure out like where I want to go with this. I think that you're definitely right. The media has a limited attention span when it comes to transgender people. And it's really a matter of we need to keep making ourselves heard. And that can be done, for my certain passion of acting, I think it can be done through a collaboration of writers, actors, producers, people trying to put those characters out into, popular culture. Because everyone watches television, everyone has access to the media. And so if we are, portraying transgender people accurately and dealing with those issues that way, then we can reach a lot more folks than just the folks who turn on a news channel. Because, of course, as we know by news channels, some of them accurate and all of them are biased. And so I think television is a way where we can really just show transgender people as people and tell stories that way. I don't know if that answers your question at all.
I think it got there. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. I was hoping I was getting there. I was on my metaphorical bike in my mind, and I was like, all right, there's a fork in the road and it goes 5 different ways. Where you want to go, Nicole? So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just add, one of my unique dreams is NRA camp for LGBTQ kids. And,
I see that for you.
Why can't every kid get to go to shooting camp? I looked online to see where I could actually take them, and I couldn't find any place in the United States. I found one in Canada. So I have my own mission. I can let you guys handle your mission, and I'll go work on that one. So maybe you'll come help me. I don't know.
Yeah.
So thank you. That was a great question. That's it?
I really want a chance to throw this at somebody.
Okay. Right here.
All right, right here.
Okay.
It's pretty. Uh-oh, he's got notes.
Get ready, Dad. You're up.
So this is kind of hard for me. I'm not really a public speaker or anything. And so I had to write some of it down.
No problem.
That's good.
But I'm probably an odd one out in the room, but I wanted to start before I said anything by saying I have no problem being here. And I think you have every right to make your choices, and I support you.
Thank you very much.
And then I guess next I want to say I'm kind of disappointed with the country as a whole, with how torn apart it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why it's so bad to be one thing or another. And it's kind of scary right now for me by admitting in a room of people who probably aren't, but I'm one of those people who, I'm right-wing, I guess you'd say, or conservative. And that's kind of scary to admit anymore.
Yeah.
Because you do get a lot of backlash, and especially as a white male, as soon as you say, oh, I'm conservative, people want to start asking you, well, oh, you're racist and sexist, and it's like, not really, no. And so I don't know why it's such a it's such a bad thing to be that anymore. And I really wish there was equality in the world, and I wish you wouldn't get judged for that. But I see these people who think that they're going for equality, and really they're taking away the power from one person and they're switching it to another. And I think, why can't we just be normal? And why can't we all just be accepting? Because just like it's your choice to be who you are, I'd like to make my choice to be conservative and to be Christian and to not be seen as a racist or sexist person, because that's not who I am. And so,
oh, sorry.
No, I just want, that's just my
Well,
bit.
I just want to, thank you for the courage to say that.
Yeah.
And,
Give him a hand.
You know, I think people today say conservative like it's a dirty word, but I'm still a pretty conservative man. We had to quit going to church for a while. But Nicole just did the sermon at the church we used to go to in Orono, Maine, which was amazingly surreal and rewarding for me. And we have, my wife is the executive assistant for the Cumberland County Sheriff, which law enforcement as a community is pretty conservative. And 50% of the men and women that work there have Nicole's back, and they're Trump supporters. Not everybody believes in everything that President Trump's doing, and I still call him president because I have a lot of respect for the position. I can tell that you're a good person, and just the fact that you're here willing to speak out for what you believe in. And not everybody that's conservative is a racist, homophobic, white male with privilege, but you and I both have privilege that we don't understand yet. And as you grow to be my age, you're going to learn some things about, and you're going to open your mind and your heart to things that you can still be a good, proud, conservative Republican and make our country just as good as it's always been. I don't think we need to make it great again. It's already great. But we need to get right on the right path, so both sides of the aisle are solving our budgetary needs and our concerns abroad, and building a military, and also making sure that we still pay taxes so we can have the community that we need to protect all Americans. So God bless you, and you're going to have a great future because of the fact that, not just as a conservative young man, but for having the bravery to speak out for what you believe in, and that's what we're trying to do too. So there's a lot of room for both of us. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to add on to what you said. I think, it's Pride Month, as I'm sure a lot of you guys know, and I was scrolling through the internet and I saw this flow chart that someone had made. And it was talking about can you celebrate Pride Month? And it was a flow chart saying basically if you were not oppressed by transphobia or homophobia that, you can't celebrate Pride. And that's ridiculous. But, in my community, I've seen a lot of that kind of exclusivity. And that's not what equality is about. It's about, and I think that's really what America is about, and that's what makes it great. It's about, you can believe what you believe. We can all believe whatever we want, and we can get along and sit at the same table and live in the same country. And that's what we're all here to do. We're all here to be the best versions of ourselves. And when we're, telling other folks what they can and can't do, and that they can't be who they are, that's when, the line is drawn. And so I want to say thank you thank you again for, just coming out here and being able to be brave and speak up. Because you're right, there is a lot of backlash associated with being a conservative now. And I don't think that's right. I think folks should be able to believe whatever they want to believe, and they shouldn't get backlash for that. We should all be able to live together and sit at the same table. So thanks for coming out today.
I would end with within reason, because where we need to go, and this is what I've told my kids, and this is just one dad's journey. 80% of the people in the world are good people. 40% of them don't really know they're good people yet. They're not where they don't have the life experience to learn to be where they need to go. And then there's a 5 to 10% on either side that are extremists on the left and the right that I can't waste my time trying to help them grow.
The extreme on either side.
That's right. So, but everybody else, we're going to get there. But there's 3 things we got to do. We got to make sure that every American, every human being is safe. And we need to make sure that they have the opportunity to love and love who they want to love. And then be able to be a productive member of society. If we can do those 3 things, we're all going to be okay. So, thank you very much for your time and your company. And I think we're running out of time. And we're going to have Nicole to sign some books. Yeah. And say hi. Come say hi.
Do. We're huggers.
Thank you.
How do I shut this off? Daddy, how do I shut this off?
I don't know.
The mute button isn't working.
We'll come back.
Bill, come do it.
Oh, well.
How do we do?
Good. I love the way.
I've had the pleasure of listening to them 2 times earlier today, as well as getting to know them a little better over a meal, and just found the family just very delightful. And I wish that I could spend more time with them, but they have to go off to their next adventure. I'd like to extend my gratitude and thanks to Nicole and Wayne for being here with us, and to Linda Herrera for contacting them and making arrangements. And I've told the other 2 groups that Linda contacted them through Facebook, and so just by that grace, we were able to get them to be here today. I'd also like to thank everyone who worked and is working to make this day possible. This is our 3rd presentation today, and so people have been working really hard today and throughout the last week or so to get this ready. I hope you enjoy the rest of the program, and thank you for sharing this very special event with us. I'm going to turn it over to Nicole, who's going to introduce her father, Wayne.
Thank you guys all so much for coming. This is a little strange because I usually don't introduce my father. It's usually the other way around. So, I've recognized that I identified as a girl from, really as early as I could. I have an identical twin brother, Jonas, and at about the same age that he was realizing that he liked to play with trucks and action figures, I was realizing that I didn't like to play with trucks and action figures. And expressing that to my parents with the vocabulary of a 3-year-old was really difficult. My brother has always been my greatest supporter, and he was the one person that I never had to come out to as transgender. He was always the person who would back me up when I was arguing with my parents about, my identity. And at no more than 8, he told my dad, you have to face it. You have a son and a daughter. And my mother has always been this strong, incredible woman. She's my hero. And she didn't have super set expectations for what her children were supposed to be like when it came to especially gender. And she really realized that, the world wasn't always a safe and accepting place for folks who, don't rigidly fit into the male and female shaped boxes. So she vowed to make sure that Jonas and I always had a safe place to come back to in her home. But the problem with that was that at home, my father wasn't completely on board. And he had these set expectations for what raising identical twin boys was supposed to be like. You know, he pictured 2 baseball gloves, 2 footballs, and 2 hunting rifles. And, you know, we were gonna all be good old boys together. And in fairness, we did do a couple of those things, as I turned out to be able to hit a home run better than my brother. But because of the expectations that my father had, it was harder for him to accept his child as transgender. And we have this incredible book out right now called Becoming Nicole, The Transformation of an American Family. And I really like that title because it's not the transformation of one child and the transformation of, you know, one person from one gender to another. It's really about our family and how we had to transform ourselves and change our values. And my father, more than anyone, really had to turn on a 180-degree angle the way he looked at the world and just how he thought of sex and gender. All because, you know, he loved his babies. And so, without further ado, it is my honor to introduce you guys to my dad, Wayne Maines.
Thank you for coming. I do love my babies, but I heard some stories at dinner. I said, I don't want to know that. Don't tell me those. Don't tell me those stories. It's very surreal having this book out. We're just an average family, and now we get to come to Oregon and talk to people and meet people all over. Next, we're going to Pennsylvania, then Fargo, North Dakota. You know, so that should be a trip to go there and give this talk. A lot of people say how courageous you are for doing this, and it isn't really about courage. It's really, for our family, we kind of got pushed in a corner. And I'll never forget, I guess the best way to explain it is we got invited to Washington, D.C. to do some lobbying, and we had the unique opportunity to go meet Eric Holder. And we went, and we had all the big shots, all the LGBT big shots of the D.C. area with us. And they go, how did you get in this building? We've never been here. And they just wanted to meet us. So we got there, and we told our story. And at the end, it was Assistant Attorney General James Cole that said the exact same thing. He goes, you guys are very courageous. And my son said, Jonah said, no, we're not. We just got pushed into a corner. And then the Assistant Attorney General looked at Jonas and said, Jonas Maines, you know how many Medal of Honor winners I've heard say that same thing? And then I started to cry. I might do that again here in a minute or two, but these kids, these LGBTQ kids that are in our country that come out to their friends and their families when they know they got to go to school every day, they are very courageous. As parents, we're not supposed to be courageous. We're supposed to be parents and do our jobs and protect our children and make sure they have safe schools and a safe place to go to church and play sports and music. When we started to work on this book, and I started to read, the editing was the hardest part, and I saw in the first 5 chapters my biggest failures. Kelly goes, you really want to do this? That's my wife. And I said, we have to. I teach a course in leadership, and that's what leaders need to do. I tell them, if you want to be a leader and you want to work in Washington, D.C., you need to face your own fears and get rid of your own demons before you can help others. And then you have to have the courage to protect all Americans, not just select people. You know, my job, next slide, Nicole. You got it? Oh, well, okay, never mind. Oh, I got to look.
Went early.
All right, thanks. So
Overshot it.
I think about leadership, and I think about these kids, and I think about equality a lot. And my new hero is Eleanor Roosevelt. And she says, the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. I had a lot of dreams for my family and my wife. And some of them were baseball and football and deer rifles. And I had these 2 little boys. From my daughter and my son and their friends, I learned that I never had 2 little boys. I have a son and a daughter, and I resisted that. Then one day, we were going to Walmart. They have Walmarts here? I think they probably do in Oregon. I got out of the car. The kids couldn't have been more than 12 years old, and I went to grab Jonas's hand, just like instinctively, and he looked at me like, "What the hell are you doing, Dad? Guys don't hold hands in Walmart parking lot." And then Nicole got out of the car, and she grabbed my hand, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I have a daughter. She's going to hold my hand the rest of my life. Jonas is going to get married and he's going to leave, and his mother and I are going to try to get him to come home for Easter, so the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. And so many people took my dreams away and my wife's dreams away from our family. And many of my dreams became nightmares. I worried about Nicole's safety every day. I still worry about her safety every day. I worry about what happens of not having your father live with you for 5 years and being in court and being ridiculed on the Bill O'Reilly show when you're 12 years old will do to her later in life. I worry that Nicole and so many other transgender people can be fired in almost every state just for being transgender, that they won't get the medical care that they need, that they're going to be denied housing and their own veterans benefits because they came out while serving our country. They need to have the same dreams that we have, and we need to get rid of the nightmares. Next slide, please. These are some of my nightmares. In 2007, a right-wing Christian group in Maine and a national group came and targeted our family. Everything was going well, but they decided that there was no room for a transgender child in our community. And our life was changed forever. There's so many things that I've never told Nicole that happened during those days. People that we knew and trusted would see us coming and walking down the street and they'd cross the road. We had death threats. All because a 9-year-old just wanted to be who they were and who they needed to be. Next slide. Just keep hitting these. Just kind of give you an idea of the press. Keep going. So for 5.5 years, every night I would go to bed. Before I'd go to bed, I would check all of our social media sites and delete and post and block and delete and block. And then every morning at 5 a.m. I'd do it again before the kids would have an opportunity to see what was being said. It was years later after our book came out. Of course, at this point, any grandparents in here? Please don't give your grandchildren iPhones. Nicole came out of her bedroom at midnight as I was checking social media, and she said, "Dad, do you know what people are saying about us? The hateful comments." And then, of course, Nicole, if you know her very well, she's pretty confident and a little edgy, and she goes, "You know, Dad, the press cares. They need to hear from me. I need to tell these people what's going on." I said, "No, you don't." Because every time we responded, the negative people responded in even greater force. But there's a lesson to be learned there. Next slide. Well, go past this one. You know, the first two talks today were, Nicole was the main speaker, and she told her story. And I think it's important that at night I would hope that there were going to be more parents and grandparents and community members here, because we needed to hear what a parent's journey is like for raising a LGBTQ child. And it starts with everybody in this room has a set of family values. And every one of them, every family's values are entrenched by their grandparents, their coaches, their churches, their ministers, their priests, their rabbis. And that's what you have, and that's what you believe. And I had family values. And my family values failed my children. I believe that boys played with trucks and girls played with dolls, and that anything else in between was wrong. I thought I was a pretty good person. I believe in honesty and hard work, saving for the future, and even paying taxes. I thought if I helped my neighbors, they would help me. And then I learned that people are afraid of things that I didn't understand. And then I learned that I was afraid of my own child. And I couldn't help her until I faced my own fears. I'm just a poor kid from the Adirondacks in upstate New York. I explained to my children that we didn't even have running water when I was 6 years old. She cannot fathom that might have even been. And I worked first generation college student, just like many of you here, and I worked so hard to get to the other side of the tracks, and I made it. I thought I had everything I needed to do to be a good American, and a good father, and a good husband, and a good neighbor. But deep down in my belly, I was still afraid of what the neighbors thought. I was ashamed of my own child. And that's really hard to say with her sitting here right next to me. But you know, if we don't tell our children the truth and let them know that their parents are infallible, they can't grow. But what I learned from my daughter and my son and their friends is that everybody's different. Diversity is a good thing. I love everybody. I'm not afraid of anybody. I'm not afraid of anything anymore. And I'm on a mission to make sure that every child in the United States gets to have what Nicole had. A supportive family, supportive community. After we sued him, of course, you know, there was a little... the medical care that she deserves and needs, and the confidence to grow up and be a beautiful, strong, amazing person. I show you this slide because it kind of shows you a little bit of where I came from. You know, I'm an ex-Republican, still fairly conservative man. I was an independent for a while, but in Maine you can't vote in the primaries, so I registered this past election as a Hillary delegate. Or a Hillary. I registered to be a Democrat, and 3 weeks later they asked me to be a Hillary delegate. I go, holy crap, I've only been a Democrat for 3 weeks. And, but, you know, we have some notoriety. And then we lost an election. I've never seen a college campus or community turn and be so depressed so quickly. I'm sure there was some of that here in Oregon too. I had to tell my children, you need to harness that anger. It's okay to be angry, but you need to harness that and get involved and not just talk about changing the world. You need to get involved. Next slide, please. I'll go tell anybody how much I've learned about gender and gender identity and gender expression. It took me a while. Gender queer was a hard one for me to wrap my head around. And then I went to this ball, rainbow ball with Nicole, and all these kids were up all night in my room. I didn't get any sleep. They were watching anime all night. And they were all kids from all across the spectrum. And I was laying up in my bunk. It was the University of Maine, Machias, which is down East Maine. If anybody knows anything about Maine, this is about as back country as you can get. But they bring in these 200 LGBTQ kids, and they just let them have a great weekend when the campus is on spring break. And I started to go in my mind, is that kid gay? Is that kid trans? What's that kid over there, you know? And then I watched and I looked, and they were having so much fun. I realized it doesn't matter. Why do I have to try to put a label on anybody? They're just kids having fun, human beings, doing what they wanted to do, being with friends and making new friends. I've had so many defining moments like that. And then, of course, we were in court for 5 years, and there's so many struggles that we had to deal with. And when I reached out to my friends in law enforcement, my conservative friends, they were all caring, but they didn't help. The people that came to my family's aid have purple hair and nose rings and tattoos and all things that I would have always been respectful, but I would have never reached out to those individuals. And those are the people that saved my daughter's life and my family. They're my people now. I mean, I still got my little military haircut here, and I don't have any tattoos, Nicole. You know, but man, you know what I learned from the LGBT community? That we all want the same things. We all want to be loved. We all want to be respected. We want to be safe. And we want to grow and prosper with our friends and hopefully our families. I learned that it's okay to say I love you to a stranger or in public. When you do what I do for a living, you put up a wall. That's my job. It's a wall. I don't have that wall when I'm not on the job. I'll hug anybody in this room. When we're done, you want a hug, you come see me. I'll give you one. I'm going to need one, so come see me. So, Becoming Nicole, the book and our journey, we survived it. You know, we have this notoriety. We had a book. That's not what's important. What's important now is we share what we learned so other families don't have to do what we had to do. We won the highest discrimination case for transgender rights in the country at our state Supreme Court, 2014, and there's still families not being treated properly in Maine because once you get a law passed, then you have to make sure that it gets enforced, and now we have to educate everybody. And we have to go one school at a time sometimes and tell that superintendent and administration or college president that we mean it. More importantly, LGBT people in your community need to and your schools and the faculty have to say, we mean it. And if we do that together, we can change not only a state, but maybe the nation. You know, and Nicole, this slide is kind of funny because she would come and say, I am a girl boy, and I just didn't know what to do, so I ignored it. Then she'd say, when she got a little older, I'm a girl trapped in a boy's body, and I would still ignore it. And then when she got a little older, she'd say, Dad, I'm a girl, and we would have these arguments. And I lost every one of those arguments. I have a PhD, and I was losing arguments with a 6-year-old. You know why I lost? Because I was wrong. You can't out-debate somebody that's right. And the little snot's very persistent. So, next slide. I want to play a little clip. You know, I can be pretty hard on myself, but I've always loved my children. I wasn't where I needed to be, but I always was there to protect them. And I know dads that would have never taken this video. They would have, if they had it, they would have destroyed it by now. And we didn't. And of course, Amy Ellis Nutt, who wrote the book, said, man, this is really good. I need this. So just check this clip out real quick. Hi, Wyatt. What you doing? So everything she did at that age, and even younger, was to do whatever she could to be a woman, be a girl. So she'd put T-shirts on her head, to have hair, and I just laughed. Because quite frankly, at that age, it doesn't really matter. It was, you know, I wasn't that worried yet. And but as she got older and she could really verbalize what was going on, it got harder. One time we had an old dairy farm in upstate New York that we were restoring, and I had the kids. They couldn't have been maybe 4, maybe just before we moved to Maine, 4.5. And I had restored a bathroom, clawfoot tub, 5-inch ash floor from our forest, a concrete countertop, and Nicole was Wyatt then. And I have to, you know, some people give me a hard time for saying Wyatt, but you have to frame the story. And, you know, names are just names. But it was hard for me back then, as Nicole was experimenting with other names. I couldn't give up Wyatt Benjamin. So anyway, this was a good day. We were building things. She had her, and it's hard for me to say Wyatt now, because, again, that's not who she is. But she had her tool belt on. Remember that show, Tool Time? So we're in there doing guy stuff. We're building tools. We got our tools. And I'm just in my glory. You know, we're building stuff. And it was time for a break. So we got some apple juice and some animal cookies. And we're having our snack. And she looks up at me and says, Daddy, I hate my penis. When does my penis go away? Another big change for me is I can say the word penis in public now. You know, I would have never been able to do that. And I picked, you know, I knew, but I was in denial. But I picked my baby up and I said, don't worry, Wi-Fi. Everything's going to be okay. And then the tears just started running down my face because I knew everything wasn't going to be okay. And I don't know if anybody has little kids or twins, but when you got one and something's going on, the other one isn't far behind. And The next thing you know, Jonas is tugging on my leg, and I pick him up, and I got 2 kids in my arms, and we're all crying, and I slide down on the floor, and Kelly comes up from the barn, and she looks in the bathroom, and she goes, "What the hell's going on in here?" And I couldn't say anything then. Later, it's another one of those defining moments. I told her what happened, and she said to me, "Wayne, I've been trying to tell you, but you won't listen to me." She said, "Wayne, you're not a team player." It crushed me. I'm a sports guy. I coach everything. I'm a team sports team player. And telling me that I'm not a team player was what I needed to hear. There's so many dads out there that are afraid of their babies. And I'm not trying to stereotype, but it is really more men that are having a problem with this. And unfortunately, more men are running the country than should be. And I think it's how we're raised and how we're perceived and how we look at life and our values. Next slide, sweetie. Keep going. So I had all these defining moments. In 2009, because of the Christian right and the seriousness of the safety for our family, my wife quit her job at the police department of northern Maine, and we moved our kids 2.5 hours south, and they lived in hiding. Maine's a pretty liberal state. It's almost as liberal as Oregon, we thought, anyway. I loaded up a U-Haul. You know, I'm an executive director. I don't know how old I was at the time, 50, and I loaded a U-Haul. Anybody loaded a U-Haul at 50 in here? It's not a happy experience. There's 2 things that happened in that long drive. I had my son with me, and I kept saying I can't show him how stressed I am. I can't show him the anxiety that I have. And I kept thinking, Wayne, you're a failure. You failed your children. Because I knew every Sunday I had to drive 2.5 hours north to our home and live alone until the next Saturday. And for the next 5.5 years, I only saw my family 1.5 days a week because people fear things they don't understand. I was angry. But I still wasn't the person I needed to be. But when we were unloading that U-Haul, I heard an announcer. It was like, of course, we're not supposed to talk about Bill Cosby anymore, but it's the people in my generation. Remember when he used to do that skit about the ark and God would be coming like a microphone and talking, telling him how to build? Well, I heard this announcer, and I didn't know there was a football stadium like 2 blocks away, and I thought it was like God talking to me, like, what's going on here, you know? And but then I realized it was a football stadium, and I said, well, maybe we can go to football games again. Because we couldn't go to football games or sporting events or to the movies in our hometown because we never knew who was going to cause a problem. So anyway, we went to this first football game. It was Portland High against South Portland, 2 rival teams. And we were safe because nobody knew who we were. We were living in hiding. I was having a great time. I love football. The kids really didn't know the sport. I'm explaining it to them. There's all these football moms around us talking about whose kid's bigger, faster, smarter, whose daughter's, going to Colby, whose daughter's going to Oregon State or, wherever. And I was saying, May, this is going to work. There's some good things. And then it was halftime. And Jonah said, Dad, can I go to the snack bar? And I flinched. Because I could never, my wife and I, we could never let our kids go anywhere alone. Then I realized nobody knows who he is. He can go. So I gave him $20, and my first thought was, man, I'm never going to see that $20 again, you know. So he goes off to the snack bar. And the moms are talking all around us, and Nicole and I are watching the cheerleaders. And she looks up at me and says, Dad, sometimes I hate being transgender. I had heard this before, so I knew what to follow was not going to be good. And I could feel the football moms starting to move. They'd heard it too, so they're starting to move in. And I go, sweetie, why do you say that? She said, I saw this movie at a PRISM meeting. It's like a GSTA meeting about a transgender girl that was killed. Daddy, do you know that transgender people are raped and murdered every day? And I was crushed. I don't know about your families, but in my family, we always never told the truth. And to kids, we just said everything's going to be okay. And but my wife's family's not that way. So I knew I had to man up and tell the truth. I said, sweetie, you are a beautiful young woman. I will do whatever I can to protect you, but I can't always be there. Promise me you'll never go anywhere alone. Promise me that you'll call me. If I can't be there, I know a cop in every county in this state and in New England that will be there. Jonas shows up right about then with a half-eaten hot dog, a hamburger, French fries, cotton candy, and a candy apple. And I said, what'd you get for your sister? And he goes, she didn't say she wanted anything. You know? I think I got $1 and a nickel. You know, Maine's a little cheaper than Oregon is. And so the kids went back to the game. And at that moment, I'm fighting back the tears. And I look around me, and there's like 7 football moms just bawling. And there's one woman reaches out with her hand, and she didn't know what to say. I was not at a football game anymore. I was trapped in another nightmare. I said to her, I have to do something. I have to do something. But I don't know what to do. I said, I don't know what to do. I don't have the tools to protect my own child. I never saw this woman again. We held hands. And we cried. And as I left the stadium, I said, I'm going to be a better person. And I'm going to do something to protect my family and my daughter and her friends. And I've never looked back. I've been doing something, and I've been crying in public ever since. You know, so but here's what I learned. You can't do something if you can't just talk about it. You got to get involved. And I tell every college class, whether there's 5 or 1,500 in the class, you guys are all talk, you know? My son's, oh, man, that kid's smart as can be. And I said, Jonas, I mean, don't get me wrong. He fought the fight right there with us when he was younger. And now he knows politics inside and out, but he hasn't. I haven't seen him march. I haven't seen him go talk to his state senator. We haven't seen them write a story. Anybody can do that. 12-year-olds. Gabby, you can write to your state senator. Yeah, I'll help you, you know. So everybody in this room can do something. It's not always easy, but it's what we're going to have to do to make the world, to keep the ground that we have won and fought for and not lose any more. Next slide. So I went to that football game, and not too long after that, the Tea Party took over the state of Maine. Governor Paul LePage. Look this guy up. You really need to. It scares me. Well, anyway, they tried to pass this bill, LD 1046. It was a bathroom bill. It's the same bill that they have in North Carolina and the same bill that's cropping up all over the country. And for the first time in public, I testified and proudly said how much I love my daughter and my family, that how much harm they were doing to these children. I'll never forget it. I went to a meeting with all the advocacy groups in Maine, but I had been bow hunting earlier, so I was still half in camo. They didn't know who I was, so they thought I was like the other side infiltrating their meeting, you know. But once I got up at the end and started crying again and told them who I was, then they all wanted to give me a hug. And so I did that, and you know what? We were still going to lose. So I went home, and I called our friends at GLAAD, the Gay, Lesbian, Advocacy Defenders in Boston, and I said, I cannot tell Nicole that she's going to lose even more than she's already lost. She was 13 years old, and I said, I think they need to meet her. So I talked to Kelly, and we said, okay, if Nicole's willing to do it, and she did. And I just wanted to play you a little clip. Nicole talked to every state representative and every state senator, and then we listened to them debate our family history and our state house, which, in some states you don't get to hear the debate, but in Maine you do. And I think it's so important that you do and hear both sides. But this is a very good friend of ours, State Senator Emily Kane.
This is a minute report. A roll call is in order. Chair recognizes the representative from Orono, Representative Kane.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to oppose the pending motion and to speak briefly. The proposition in this bill related to unlawful public accommodations and legitimate privacy concerns is not about bathrooms nor locker rooms to me. It is not about pulling threads in an unraveling of the Human Rights Act, and it is not an abstract concept about transgendered people or transgendered person. But it is for me about Cam and for Nicole and others like them. And then there's Nicole. Nicole grew up in Orono. She has a twin brother. Her case is well known to the Human Rights Commission in Maine, and her story was told eloquently by her father in front of the Judiciary Committee at the hearing on this bill. I've had the privilege of getting to know Nicole and her family for years, as they worked in the community of Orono to educate the community and to make sure that when their daughter went to school every day, she could do so like any other kid. Nicole and her family have had to leave Orono, and they now live in a different part of the state where Nicole goes to school every day like any other kid, absolutely afraid that someone might find out that she's transgendered. Because Nicole is stealth. That's the term that this kid had to learn in order to go to school every day to feel normal. And sitting with Nicole just a few weeks ago here at the State House, you might have seen her in the hallway and you wouldn't have known that Nicole is stealth or that she is a transgendered person. I've been lucky to get to know the story of Nicole and her family and learn about how open Nicole is to talking to you or anyone else about her experience. and about how this type of backward step with the Maine Human Rights Act puts in jeopardy her ability to go to school every day and learn, her ability to go to the mall and shop like any other kid, her ability to go with her parents to a show or to the movies and simply use the bathroom. This bill is unnecessary, and I believe will cause more problems than we even know now.
You think I'm crying now? When I heard that, I just cried and cried. And when Emily was done, she cried and we hugged. And I was very proud of our state. And then a couple years later, we won our state Supreme Court case, and I was even more proud of our state Supreme Court justices for doing the right thing, to being the first state to have the courage to say that everybody in Maine gets to be who they need to be. But I also learned that you can't make that ground if we don't tell our stories, the good stories and the bad stories. There's still families in Maine not being treated fairly. There's a reason it's called the Maine Human Rights Commission. It's not just about LGBTQ people, it's about everybody that's discriminated, or it's human rights. Nicole, I've lived in West Virginia, Alaska, Wyoming, and Texas. And every one of those states I've hunted and fished and met some amazing people. And I can't take my daughter there and really feel comfortable. And that's the United States of America. We got snowed in Charlotte, North Carolina this winter. And I saw a change in Nicole. She was not as confident, and she was angry. And that's with a kid that's got it about as good as can be. There are families leaving North Carolina and West Virginia, giving up their farms to save their children, and knowing that they're leaving their grandparents behind, and they may never get to go back. That's happening in the United States of America. Jonas does this joke about George Bush. Remember how he used to say America? America. So, man, that's not the country that I volunteered to serve. We got some ground to make up. We're in North Carolina, and Nicole, I was trying to just keep it normal as I watched people go by with hats with Confederate flags and Make America Great t-shirts. That never bothered me before. It bothers me now. It's human rights, not just in America. It's a whole world that we have to protect. Next slide. I get angry and I get emotional and I get on this soapbox because I'm on a new parents committee in Washington, D.C. with 9 other families trying to help promote human rights. There are 135 anti-LGBT. They left off the queue because they can't even spell that in Washington. That have been introduced in 30 states. There's bathroom bills and religious freedom bills and outright you can't be anything bills. They want to roll back marriage equality, and they look at that. Luckily, 108 of them were dispersed, but that doesn't mean they're going away. They're tweaking them. That's what I learned when we worked with our state house. Laws are made in the hallway as they compromise. Unfortunately, 9 of those bills passed, in Alabama, Florida, Kentucky, North Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Utah, Virginia. There's a lot of middle of America. Don't get me wrong, I love coming here and talking to you guys, but I want to go talk to people in Utah and North Dakota and challenge them. You see at the bottom there, Oregon is one of the few states that's actually passed LGBTQ protections. I love you guys for that. I know families with trans kids that have moved from middle America to Portland and given up their homes and their careers to move to Portland, Oregon, so they can have the medical care in a safe school. There's a lot of work to be done. Next slide. So here's one of the projects I'm working on. It's called the Equality Act. There's two projects, the Equality Act and the Student Non-Discrimination Act. They're both very short, and I'll never forget it when they sent them to me, and Kelly's driving the van to Washington, and I'm reading this act, and both of them basically say that every LGBT kid gets to have the same rights that their classmates have in school. And I got thinking about it. Holy crap, I already thought they did. You know, I understood the bathroom thing because people are afraid of it, but I already thought this is America. We have it's the Student Non-Discrimination Act, but there's also ENDA, the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. So I'm talking to our state senators, and I go, Susan Collins, I said, you were very instrumental in getting the Employment Non-Discrimination Act passed, so we protect adults in America from discrimination, and we don't have the courage to protect children? Like, what's up with that? It just, I can't fathom that we even have to go lobby to protect our kids. But it's all about these goofy little fears that somehow the LGBT people are going to disrupt the third grade or something. I don't know what that's all about. I know it's fear. So we've been spending a lot of time in Washington, but you don't have to. It's hard to get there and it's expensive, but you can write. And you have, every one of your senators and representatives has a local office. Equality Act, I think. But it's got legs, and hopefully we'll pass it. And here's why we need it. Next slide. So Nicole, when she was ready to go to college, you know, you don't think about it all. Even all the discrimination and the hate that my family went through and had to fight for, college is this exciting time for your children. They get to go and decide where they want to go to school. Nicole goes, they have a great program in Savannah, Georgia at the Art Institute or whatever. And before I could close my stupid mouth, because I say things I shouldn't sometimes, I go, what are you, nuts? You can't go to school there. You can't send you to Georgia. You know, I don't want to break the kid's heart. But we had to seriously think about what states she could go to. Now, almost any college campus, while you're on campus, you're probably going to be okay. But you got to leave the campus sooner or later. So she had a lot of limitations. And then there's this housing business. There's 4,000 colleges and universities somewhere around there in the United States, and only 266 of them have housing for transgender students. And every one of those 266 almost has some kind of restriction. We got a lot of work to do. Next slide. Next slide. So what are some of those restrictions? Even UMaine, when I first got there, they had a law, anti-discrimination, gender identity expression, but transgender kids could only live on the 4th floor, one dorm. What is that telling those kids? Students, I gotta quit calling them kids. It tells them they're different. Every step of the way when Nicole was growing up, somebody kept telling her she was different. Or you can't be there as a freshman. Like, what's the difference? You know. So they did something at UMaine. And you remember, I worked there. I'm a executive director for safety and security. So the director of housing, when Nicole was signed up to come to college where I work, He was very proud. He goes to me, Wayne, we just put in a new bathroom and a new shower room on the first floor of Nicole's dorm. He was very proud. And again, I opened my mouth too quickly and said, Dan, we just won a 5-year court battle that says she can use any damn bathroom and locker room she wants to. His jaw dropped. I said, wait a minute, time out, Dan. We still need that bathroom and shower. And here's why. Here's what I've learned from the LGBT community and anybody else. Not just, there are kids that just don't want to go to the bathroom with other people. Everybody transitions in their own way and is comfortable at some point in time. They might need that bathroom. I said, here's what Nicole's going to tell you. She's on the 4th floor. She's not going to bleep, 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 walk all the way down to the 1st floor to use the bathroom or the shower. I still don't like the bleep, bleep, bleep thing, you know. The language is just too colorful for me, you know. But that's what she would tell her, and I have to back her up on that. So when she showed up just before her freshman year, they did something really groundbreaking, which shouldn't be. They said, hey, what works for you, Nicole? Do you want a room of your own? Do you want a roommate? Do you want a private bathroom? What do you want? If they asked every kid that had those needs what works for you, they wouldn't have any problems. I mean, you got to work it out, obviously, but Nicole just became a normal college kid, even with all our notoriety and drama. Nobody cares. That's what I learned. Their generation, they don't care. It's my generation, our generation, that has a problem with any of that stuff. What works for you? That's all we need to ask them. Next. Because when you don't ask them, this is what happens. I watched my child and her brother. Remember, this isn't a journey about just one kid. So there's a lot of times Jonas had it harder than Nicole, especially in middle school. Middle school boys. We literally were being ridiculed on the Bill O'Reilly show. Our names were in the paper, on television, and Jonas is trying to go to school and just be an average boy. Remember I said we couldn't go to football games. One football game we did go, and of course I was behind him. He didn't know it, and I heard his buddies yell, hey, Jonas, have you had sex with your sister yet? And that's bad enough, but later, he's a pretty sensitive kid. And he came up to me in tears and said, Dad, why do people have to be so mean? Then when they tried to pass that bill, Jonas did an interview on NPR. And I heard him say that he was worried about extremists, that he was worried about the worst, that somebody might kill his sister. He was 13 years old. And I was in a place in my life then that I told Jonas that I don't care what you have to do to protect your sister, you do it. Baseball bat, 2x4, I don't care. I'm not proud of that anymore. But I felt like I was trapped, but that's not the answer. I know I was wrong. My kids have experienced everything on this tree, and they survived it because they had people that loved them. They had good friends. They had a school that supported them in high school. And then there's one really unique thing there that's a little different for the transgender community. And especially kids need the medical care. Parents have to have the courage to make sure they get the medical care they need. Jonas is Nicole's identical twin. Every day, as she watched him grow, She saw what she could look like. You can have a supportive family, a supportive school, friends, but as a teenager, and you get to visualize what you can't be, it can be overwhelming. The suicide rate for these kids is through the roof. But when they get the medical care that they need, and they know that there's hope, and they have a future in every way, they get to turn out like this one and be a semi-successful college student. Yeah. She used to go to this camp where it was the first trans camp in the country, and I called the director the other day. There were like 40 of these kids that went to the first camp, and we run into them across the country. They came from all over, and they're doing amazingly well because they had everything that they needed. But there's thousands of kids that don't. We started a parents group for trans families. Probably 5 years ago, there were 50 families. There's 5,100 families in our group now. And they have gender non-conforming to trans kids from age 2 all the way to, we even let a few 25-year-olds in there because their parents they just came out. So in a lot of ways, they're a child, and their parents are real big children. They're just freaking out. And we get to tell them, no, everything's going to be okay. You just need to follow the formula. Love your child, learn everything you can, get them the right mental health and medical professionals, and make sure they have a supportive community, like your college. It's amazing. Oregon is an amazing state. Next slide, Nicole. Keep going. I don't want that one. Here's what we've learned. As parents, you need to have some tools in your toolbox that have never been there before. When we started our journey, we knew we needed mental health professionals, but there were none in the country that knew how to deal with a trans child at 6 years old. So we trained them. You know, they're still good psychologists. Any psychologists or psychiatrists in there? So we learned together. So after you do that and you finally figure out, here's one of those things about the whole bathroom thing. Oregon's pretty cool because they really kind of let anybody, in theory, you don't just go the next day at 15 years old and say, hey, I'm a girl today and I'm going to go use the girls' locker room. Well, hopefully that you have some help getting to that journey. And you have professionals helping you, because you might not have, in Oregon, they get to do it even if their parents aren't on board. In other states, it's very complicated. So once you figure out where they're going, then you get them a good primary care physician that knows what's going on, and then you get a pediatric endocrinologist, and then you get them to a gender clinic. Now, when we started, everything we did was the first. We were the first patients for Dr. Spack at the first gender clinic in the country. And man, we learned together. And then they had Jonas as a control group, so they measured his bone structure and all that. They really was kind of cool to watch. I'm a scientist. It was really, at the time I didn't think it was cool because I was freaking out, but it's amazing science and journey. So I've had people accuse us of playing God. I had a Frenchman in Fort Kent, Maine, 3 miles from the St. John River and the Canadian border, not long ago, say to me, a 75-year-old, I could barely understand him because he spoke English and French at the same time, and maybe you guys can understand that. And he said in a whole crowd of people, don't you think that you're playing God with your child, allowing her to have hormone blockers and whatever? And the crowd just went hush. And I said to him, I know you're a good man and you love your grandchildren and your children. If they had leukemia and there was a new drug that could save their lives, would you do it? And he said, yes. I said, that's what I did. And I'd do it again. And he came up after the lecture and said to me, Mr. Maines, you're a good person and God loves you. And I shook his hand, and I knew I changed somebody's mind that day. And if I can change one person's mind in each talk, I've done my job. So earlier I said the only way to make change is to get involved. And I learned that from 6, 7, 8-year-old kids. So when I talk to college students, or even you tonight, and when you come up for the holidays, bring a copy of the book, leave it at somebody's house. Thanksgiving dinner, say, hey, I heard this really kind of emotional guy cry at a lecture at the university or a college, and open the discussion. I mean, I got my Vietnam vet moose hunting buddies to understand what it means to be transgender, and they're Nicole's biggest fans now. That I had to make sure they got a moose to do it, but maybe you can do that here too. I don't know. But I ask everybody to use your vote wisely, to get involved, and not just talk about it. Take action and help your community and your school and your church and your families grow. I've grown so much in the last 10 years that I never thought, and I always thought, I have a PhD and 25 years experience. I thought I knew everything I needed. I didn't know anything. I'm a better person today. I'm a better father, I know. I'm a better husband because I almost didn't have a marriage. That's another one of the problems in transgender families. There's a lot of divorce because fathers, mostly fathers, don't want to support their children. As maybe a couple of years ago, Kelly said, I forgive you because you do the things that I can't do, not only to protect Nicole, but to protect other children. So I have her blessing to go cry in public. And one last thing, I'm a better professional because of what I learned. Remember I said earlier, I'm not afraid of anything? It was a little bit of a white lie. I'm still afraid to dance in public. That's my last fear I got to conquer. And but I'm not afraid to tell anybody where I've failed. There's a lot of people at my level that won't tell you what their weaknesses are, where they failed. And if we aren't willing to do that, we can't help people grow. So if you haven't read the book yet, I fail a lot in the first 5 chapters, but I make a pretty good comeback. So I want to thank you so much for coming. I don't know if this is what you expected, but every one of our families have challenges and journeys. And ours was just a little different than most. But there's so many other families that need your help. Please help them. Thank you very much. Here, let me have the box. So one of the cool things that we learned, there's new technology out there. This is called the speaker in a box, and it's soft. So if you have a question, we're going to throw you the microphone, and just talk into this right here. So are there any questions? You're going to catch it anyway. You can start. You might not. There you go.
It really works? Wow.
Yeah.
I was just curious, Nicole, how has school been for you the first year?
At college?
Yes.
I'm actually going to be a third-year student this fall. And college has been really, really great. Like my dad said, the college did something that was really incredible and wasn't hard to do. And, they asked me, Nicole, what works for you? And so I've been fortunate enough. Last year I had an incredible roommate. It was the first time I'd ever had a roommate. But she was so, so nice. And, at first I was afraid, of coming out to her. But she was she's like one of my best friends now. She's incredible. And, she got me into this close-knit circle of friends. And now we're getting a suite together in the fall for our dorms. And we're going to have a therapy snake. And it's going to be awesome. well, most of us are Slytherins, so we needed a snake. And so, yeah, college has been really, really great.
Thank you. We read the book, and it was fantastic, and it's been a pleasure hearing from you tonight.
Thank you.
Anybody else want the box? Yeah. You're very welcome. And one other change, I actually do wear pink in public now too. I can do that. Got to beat the.
I know you've been eyeing this shirt.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
It's okay.
No. That's it? We're that good?
Teamwork. All right. Yes.
We got to get one of those.
On the slide before this one, you said to talk to the people when it was safe to do so. What did you mean by that?
Well, remember, a lot of our audiences are students, and sometimes they're even middle school. And I'll remember the first time that a middle schooler asked Nicole, "What do I do when my parents aren't on board?" And Nicole went, "You tell your parents." And I had to say time out because it might not be safe. You know, even college kids, we know kids that have went home and told students that went home and told their parents and they got cut off financially. So you got to have a plan and have a support group. I was in New York City one time and Jonas called me about a friend of his and said, "Dad, can she move in for the summer?" And I'm thinking, oh my, I could get one of those every week. You know, I just don't have the resources to do that. But there are resources. You have some amazing group right here in Oregon, Transactive, and there's other groups around the country that can help these kids make sure that they have the support network and a plan to do it safely. Can you imagine how dangerous it could be for some kids to come out in rural Maine when their father is, you know, really not on board? You got to be careful.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We should get one of those and we could like dye it like the trans pride flag colors. And
That's
we could,
right.
like, take it with us.
We should get one for the Pride Week.
Yeah, man.
So I don't know if I need this or not, but
It's just fun.
It's
is
fun.
it? My name is Becky. I'm a teacher in Salem Kaiser and have worked 30 years with kids who have who are emotionally handicapped. So when my son told me that I have a transgender son. He was 20. I think I reacted a lot like you did, Wayne. It was kind of denial. You know, you go through all the pretend like it's not happening and denying it and crying and thinking, well, of course it's going to change, and then having a lot of bad dreams and those kind of things. Anyway, that was 3 years ago. So we're in a good place now, and our whole family did really have to take, our family changed a lot along the way, and my husband was the last to come around. It was hard for him. He's Catholic, raised in Catholic school, and he was told a lot of things, you know, that were hard for him to forget. So, and then there's also a twin brother. So, he had trouble. He had a lot of difficulty too. It was like, well, what are you trying to be like me? You know, you're a girl. Why are you doing this? And so that's that whole connection between the twins and stuff is really special, but it was awkward too. So I think I came because I'm really glad when the word gets out and people get a chance to read about it in their privacy of their own home and talk to their other family members, and just that whole process that you have to go to understand it. And the fear, I think people a lot of times are just afraid of it, and so they say, no, we can't have that. We can't have that in our school. We can't have that. And being a teacher, I helped one of the high schools in town get a gender-free bathroom or whatever. That's the stage that they're at. They still haven't gotten past that stage, but we thought that was progress, just to have a place for some of the kids to go to the bathroom, which is a basic right. To eat and go to the bathroom and attend school. So anyway, been very good to hear the talk tonight. So
Thank you. I know, watching a young child grow has its own challenges, but when I talk at colleges, a lot of students come up later and say, really some of it's kind of sad. They say, I wish you were my dad. But then I try to remind them they've been thinking about this for a long time, and their parents might not know it. And the parents have had 20 years to realize who they thought you are, and then you want them to change your mind in like 2 days. And it's not that easy sometimes. And even when we love you, I mean, my mother still calls me Rebel, which is a dog that died like 25 years ago. So you're going to make pronoun and name problems, because there's a lot of brain cells have been formed in our old brains, and it's going to take us a little while to shift. But I tell these students, your parents love you. Just give them a little time and to figure it out, and try not to push too hard. And then there's others where, sadly to say, occasionally you just have to move on, and hopefully there's not many of those, but we do know of a few of those too, and that's just. You start a new family, I guess, but you got to survive and be who you need to be. Where's the box? Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit to, there's so many generational differences in my family. We've got 10 years between siblings and 50 years between birth parent and child, and so there's some of that we're grappling with as well. But I was wondering, for the LGBT, do you find that that gays and lesbian organizations and lobbying groups and communities, living communities, are supportive of transgender?
That's actually a really, really good question, because there's definitely a history stemming from, the gay and lesbian movements of the 70s and 80s that were especially, trans exclusive. But I don't think that's true anymore. And I've had a lot of really, really good experiences with gay and lesbian groups. GLAD, Gay and Lesbian Advocates and Defenders, were the ones who really came to our aid during our lawsuit. And of course now those guys are like family. And really with a lot of, gay and lesbian organizations and groups, we've had really, really good experiences and good conversations. So I think no matter sort of what history existed, 20, 40 years ago, it's not the same anymore. And we've really all learned to sort of be inclusive and supportive of each other. And so I've had some really good experiences.
That's good to hear.
It is really changing. My wife works for the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office, and there's a Harley biker club. It was a couple of years ago. They try to pick an organization to help raise money every year. So they wanted to raise money for our family. So there's the Harley guys, and they're now going to do a ride for transgender rights. That's pretty cool. And I said, no, guys, you don't have to do that. Why don't you do it for the gender clinic? My family's okay now. But they did. So you never know who your allies are going to be. And there's a lot of big hearts out there. So.
bad hand.
Gotta come get it. Thank you. My question is around, I haven't read your book. I just found about this talk in the newspaper and decided to come. I'm wondering, how was the transition? First of all, I don't know how old you were, and then is it like from one day to another that you decide I'm going to let my hair grow, and how that, and the other big piece for me too, so that's one question. My other question is also school. You mentioned that you guys moved. I'm wondering if it's possible, thinking of a child, small child, 6 years old, and just thinking, even though he's in kindergarten, he has friends, he loves his friends, yet thinking of that transition, of that possible transition, if it's possible to do within a community that we're not sure how acceptable it is, and if it might cause damage in doing so, or if it's better to just pull him out.
So that's actually a really, really good question. I'm glad you asked. I actually started my transition when I was 6. My parents had recognized really what living as a boy was doing to me. I had really, severe anxiety and stress and anger issues. And so we worked with our school and with our community, and we had this open channel of dialogue, and we decided to make my transition gradual, and we spread it out over the course of 1st through 5th grade. And so it started with me starting to wear pink, growing my hair out, using the single stall girls' bathroom. And then in 5th grade, I started wearing skirts. I changed my name and I used the multi-stall girls' bathroom. But what really worked about that was everyone was, communicating, and we were asking questions, and no question was really off limits. And it didn't put a strain on any of the other students in the community, because they were all eased into that with us. And so as a community, we all sort of took baby steps to sort of feel our way and bushwhack through this, because it's tricky and it's hard. And especially we started doing that in 2005, 2003. And so there wasn't a lot of information, not nearly as much as there is now. And so we really took baby steps and just tried to work together with everybody, and just try to see what worked best for the community.
I always try to tell people every family and every child is a little bit different, but you need to develop a support group. Remember we talked about having a psychologist, a counselor, and a primary care person that gets it, and you all need to get together with the school leadership team and train them and talk about it and say, because they know their school community better than you do, and you know who your friends in your community are, and you have some amazing positives here in this state. It doesn't get any better than Oregon, and you have and I mean by law, and the support behind it. So take advantage of that. And at 6, the child's not making all their decisions, but you also, if that had been my son Jonas back then when we did that, because he has a different personality than his sister, I don't think we would have made it, because he's just a different kid. He's much more, I'm sorry to tell you this, he's much more sensitive. This one's kind of in your face, tough, kind of.
I don't care.
Yeah. But every kid, exactly, you're listening, and there's some other great books out there. There's some resources. See us after. I can give you some other guidance there. But you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And
especially with his friends, my friends were really, really great when I first started coming out, because kids at that age are so, they don't really have a lot of expectations for anything. So, and it was part of my introduction. So, I would go up to somebody and I would say, "Hi, I'm Wyatt, and I'm a boy who wants to be a girl." And, they'd say, "Oh, hi, I'm Timmy, I like red and trucks." And so, kids really didn't care, and that completely made sense to them, because that's just who somebody was. And so I would definitely say, as far as, friends go, kids that age are, I think, a lot easier than, parents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You got to go deep.
All right, team, work together.
Yeah.
You're awesome. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks so much for being here. This has been amazing. I have a brother who is a hateful person, and he adopted the most amazing little fella who's 7 now. And his sister's 8, and she loves all things pink and purple and glitter and polish and heels, and so does he. And I watched my brother make comments like, if my kid were gay, ... My kid would never, ... So whenever we're alone with him, we'll say things like, someday if you choose to be married or not married, or have a husband or a wife. We want to embrace him completely because I don't care what flavor lifesaver you are, I just like lifesavers. And I don't know what we can do as an aunt and an uncle to influence that, because I want him to be as amazing as he is right now. And I don't want my brother to stifle his beauty. He looks good in heels, he really does. He's the cutest damn. I've got some amazing pictures. And I just have the fears that I've heard you express and the anxieties you've gone through. And I don't know as a family member what I should or shouldn't say or do or not do.
That's probably the hardest question I always get, because there are family situations that are extremely complicated. And even in Maine, where you are required by law to let the child do what they and be who they need to be at school, what do you do? There's FERPA and HIPAA, FERPA these things you ought to have to deal with. So I can't answer that one, and because I haven't been down that journey. I hear that. And I think what you're doing is amazing. Everybody in here has a favorite aunt or uncle that gave them hope, and when they had them, they had joy and happiness. And don't give that up. You know, try not to let them close the door, so you always have an opportunity to be part of that child's life. Because if you push too hard, you might not even get to do that. So. Man, I wish I had an answer for you. That's a hard and a sad one, and that's why we all need to work together. How old again?
He's 7.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I think one of the most important things that you can do as a family member is just let him know that, you know, you are a shoulder to cry on, you are an ear to listen, that you are a person who loves them, and as, you know, they get older, continue to like let them know. I don't know how old, I don't know what the appropriate age now where kids start getting cell phones, but you know, just make sure that he has your number.
24.
24. When he's 24, make sure that he has your number, and just, you know, let him know, like, you can call me anytime. I am always here for you. I am here to support you. And just really let him know that he's loved and that you think, let him know that you think he looks great in heels. Because really all it can take is that one special person.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you guys.
One last thing I would add is, I don't think I was ever there, but I know there's people that thought I was there. And I haven't done it in a while, I used to write a lot of articles for the Huffington Post, and they were all like moose hunting and sports stories with a transgender twist, gender nonconform. So maybe you leave one of those laying around or something. I don't know what the person's interest is, but again, I brought my Vietnam moose hunting buddies around, and they were a pretty tough crowd, but you just never know if there's a crack and you think it's safe, take the opportunity.
People surprise you.
Yeah. Well, if there are no more questions, we have some opportunity to go out in the hallway and get a hug or two and sign some books. Is that where we are? Yes. Okay.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.